Chapter 657. His figure suddenly exploded, and he punched the red copper cauldron. The old man's eyelids didn't even twitch, but the cauldron didn't move at all. Master Hong, on the other hand, was knocked back several steps by the recoil. His eyes stared at the cauldron with some hesitation. Old Hong. The other middle-aged man from the Pill Guild frowned slightly and called out to him. At this moment, a plain voice suddenly floated down from the third floor of the Morning Cloud restaurant. Her small hand pressed against the cauldron, and she said indifferently, "Can a level 11 mystic breakthrough pill and a stasis dispersing pill be exchanged for this cauldron? Here. Take a look." Without saying a word, he handed a small box to the old man. The old man's eyelids rolled slightly, and his eyes lit up as he received the box with both hands. He looked up at the little girl floating over and couldn't help but be secretly shocked. What a young little girl. Could it be that she became a pill master at such a young age? The old-fashioned girl glanced at Arbor a few more times, and asked hesitantly, "It's you?" Although they had met in a hurry that night, she had always remembered the little girl who might be able to refine pills with purple veins. Although the little girl in front of her looked very different from that night, her eyes left a deep impression. Arbor nodded at the girl in a very friendly manner. Master Hong, on the other hand, shouted angrily at the top of his voice, "Miss! Aren't you being a little too unkind by interfering like this?" Arbor glanced at that person and didn't say anything. He looked at the old man. "How is it?" The old man had already quickly checked the pills in the box. There was a level 11 mystic breaking pill and a blood stasis dispersing pill. There was not a single difference between the two pills. Both of them were high-grade purple-veined pills. The quality of their refinement was of the highest quality that had never been seen before. The old man's gaze was slightly agitated. "And, may I ask who refined this high-grade pill with purple veins?" This old man looked at its appearance and heard that its color was extremely good. In this capital city, there aren't many people who can refine pills of such quality. Arbor interrupted the old man's excited words. He didn't say anything else, and only glanced at the old man indifferently. "Then it's a deal. I'll take the cauldron now." The old man naturally kept his mouth shut and nodded his head excitedly. "Wait a minute." Master Hong's face was full of anger. He stepped forward and reached out to press the medicine cauldron. Arbor's eyes turned cold. He instantly flew up and slapped away Master Hong's palm. His small hand grabbed the medicine cauldron and lifted it up abruptly. The surrounding onlookers were all dumbfounded and tongue-tied. Under a giant cauldron that was more than 2 meters tall, a slim little girl raised the cauldron with only 2 fingers and stared coldly at Master Hong of the Alchemy Guild. "I don't like other people touching my things," Arbor said coldly, but she saw Master Hong's face change greatly and rushed towards her. "Wait! I also want to buy this cauldron." Arbor snorted coldly. His body leaped lightly and directly jumped into the air. He reached out his hand and patted the medicine cauldron neither lightly nor heavily. A wisp of profound energy was suddenly injected into it. The medicine cauldron exploded with a colorful light in the air. In just a moment, it disappeared in front of everyone. Master Hong was so angry that he almost vomited blood on the spot. Time is fleeting. It's your lack of foresight that doesn't know how to grasp the present." Arbor coldly threw his words at him, making people feel stifled. She didn't even look at Master Hong and went straight back to the restaurant. "See you tomorrow." "Oh, I've adjusted the time to daytime." Chapter 658. On the other end, Duan Yu and Mo Lian had just finished half a cup of tea. When they saw the little girl bouncing back from the window, they couldn't help but chuckle. "Where's the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron? Summon it out for us to see." Arbor beckoned with her hand, and a palm-sized red copper cauldron flew out of her conscious and landed on the table in front of them. TSK, it really is a weapon whose grade can't be determined. Mo Lien sighed softly before taking the red copper cauldron and examining it carefully. Only one of the 9 stars mirroring the moon pattern on this red copper cauldron emitted a stream of light, but it made the cauldron's body look very beautiful. Duan Yu also took it for a look, but he ultimately couldn't discern anything. He merely shook his head and said, I also can't determine its grade. Arbor tilted her head with a bit of pride on her face. Jojo is very decisive and has excellent judgment. When she saw that Master Hong's palm strike on the cauldron didn't even budge it in the slightest, she knew that this item must be extraordinary. Even if it can't be used to refine medicine in the future, it'll be good to take it out to block someone's attack at a critical moment. When she thought of this, the little fellow couldn't help but be exhilarated. Duan Yu, try hitting it. Right now. Duan Yu's eyes widened. Arbor nodded repeatedly. Try. Let's not. If I break it, where am I supposed to compensate you with a handy cauldron? Just hit it if I tell you to. Arbor spat out mystic energy, and the cauldron grew in size. She firmly grabbed one of the cauldron's legs and lifted it into the air. The little fellow sat there motionless like a mountain and blinked at him as she shouted, Come quickly. Then you have to be careful. Duan Yu made a hand gesture, and a defensive boundary was set up around the little fellow. Subsequently, a dense mystic energy pounced and heavily slammed into the cauldron from top to bottom. However, the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron remained motionless. Arbor's small hand was slightly numb from the shock of Duan Yu's mystic energy. He quickly recalled the small cauldron into his conscious and massaged his aching wrist. When Mo Lien saw this, she quickly grabbed Duan Yu's petite hand and rubbed it. She grumpily glared at Duan Yu and reprimanded, You didn't know how to control your strength. Duan Yu was also anxious. He stood up and walked to Arbor's side. Jojo, did I hurt you? No. Arbor shook his head. It's just a little shaky. Duan Yu, how much mystic energy did you use earlier? I've already used 30% of my profound strength. He was wrong, he should have only used 10%. Arbor, Get the hell out of here. The little fellow stretched out her little foot and stomped on Duan Yu's foot in a huff with a look of disdain. Scram scram. He had only used 30% of his profound energy and it was enough to make her wrist hurt. How infuriating. Is Jojo mad at me? Duan Yu actually turned to look at Mo Lien, who was chuckling on the side. Mo Lien glanced at him as though she didn't see him. She then carried Arbor over and continued to massage her petite wrist. She even instigated, Don't be good friends with Duan Yu in the future. It's simply baffling, using 30% of your strength to hurt our Jojo. That was right. It was better not to have any friends. Arbor nodded. Duan Yu, Jojo. Duan Yu hastily expressed his stance and coughed lightly. Although I'm only slightly better than you in terms of cultivation, think about it. You know how to refine pills and draw talismans, but I'm completely clueless about both. So you're still the formidable one, right? Arbor glanced at him and pondered for a moment before nodding. She felt that Duan Yu was completely right. Chapter 659. Mo Lien whispered into her ear, Darling, you might have really picked up a treasure this time. This medicinal cauldron could even block 30% of Duan Yu's attack without any fear, and the cauldron's body didn't even flinch. I reckon it's completely fine as a defensive shield in a critical moment. See, that was what she was thinking. Arbor reached out and patted Mo Lien's shoulder, giving her a great minds think alike expression. Her thoughts always coincided with Mo Lien's, making her feel that classmate Mo Lien was perhaps the person who understood her the most in the entire world. Even if this medicinal cauldron wasn't a vessel that could be used to refine medicine, it wasn't a loss for her to exchange 2 pills for a defensive shield. Seeing her adorable expression, Emolienne couldn't resist pinching her ears. Before she could say anything, she heard the door to the room being kicked open with a bang. The door panel bounced back violently, almost hitting the person who kicked the door open in the face. The old-fashioned girl followed Master Hong in awkwardly and glanced at Arbor apologetically. "Sorry for disturbing everyone. Old Hong." Another man in his 40s from the Pill Union frowned and looked at Master Hong, whose behavior was out of line, with disapproval. They had indeed rushed here to exchange for the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron after receiving Chen Huron's news. However, it was old Hong who didn't believe in someone else's medicinal cauldron in the first place and lost the initiative, allowing the little girl to obtain it. There was no right or wrong in this matter. Old Hong appeared too overbearing by refusing to let go of the little girl like this. The old-fashioned girl, Chen Huiran, also looked at Master Hong in displeasure. "Master Hong, quickly leave with us." Forcefully barging into someone else's room truly made her feel humiliated. No way. What use does a little girl like her have for that 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron? Didn't she take it because she found the medicinal cauldron fun? Master Hong said unreasonably, "Moreover, we were the ones who took a fancy to that cauldron first. How can we let others benefit from it? Could it be that our Pill Union is afraid of a few mere youngsters?" "You?" Chen Huron's long, shapely eyebrows furrowed as her face tightened. She suddenly flung her sleeves and retreated to the side. "Simply unreasonable. Grandmaster Hua, I won't interfere in this matter. Let him be." Bang! Master Hong took out a small box from his bosom and heavily placed it on the table. "Here are 2 level 11 mystic breaking pills and 1 blood stasis dispersing pill. Take it as a bargain for you. Hand over the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron." Inside the room, Jolin and Jolin opened their mouths slightly. They looked at the middle-aged man who had suddenly barged into the room and spoke very impolitely. Mo Lien and Duan Yu continued to drink their tea. They merely glanced indifferently at that idiot who barged in but didn't say anything. A moment later, the people who were gathered in front of the pill house and discussing heatedly turned their heads to take a look when they heard the sound. Master Hong, who had just aggressively gone upstairs to pick a fight, was kicked out of the restaurant by someone. At this time, he was lying flat on the street. A small box was thrown out of the window on the 3rd floor and directly smashed into Master Hong's old face. It bounced a bit before falling to the ground. The box opened, and 2 to 3 pills the size of date pits rolled out from within. An icy voice drifted into the ears of everyone on the street. "I would be embarrassed to even gift pills of this quality to a beggar. You should keep them for yourself to slowly eat." Chapter 660. Little Miss, you. Master Hua, who had followed Arbor's group from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor's lobby, was fuming. This was really not giving him any face at all. This girl directly threw one of their Pill Alliance's great masters out of the restaurant onto the street. She made their Pill Alliance's Master Hua fall on his back in full view of everyone, making a spectacularly humiliating fool of himself. Although old Hong's actions were truly out of line, but that was their Pill Alliance. No one had ever disrespected their Pill Alliance like this. Arbor's group walked out of the restaurant without looking sideways and directly boarded the carriage. Mo Lien and Duan Yu glanced at the little fellow's displeased expression and silently stifled their laughter in their hearts. The 2 of them understood the little girl too well. The little girl was probably still quite angry right now. Someone had inexplicably forced her to buy and sell, so she would definitely be very unhappy. Was the little girl someone who lacked medicinal pills? She was too blind. Go to the Marquis's estate first. Mo Lien coughed lightly. The carriage driver immediately responded and flicked his whip, driving the carriage towards the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate. Master Hua still wanted to go up and reason with Arbor's group, but he was stopped by Qin Huiran. Huiran, why are you stopping me? I have to reason with that girl. Look at this, she's blowing up the matter. She's simply a newborn calf that isn't afraid of a tiger, completely disregarding our pill alliance. Master Hua was so angry that his face was flushed red. What do you want to reason with? Chen Huiran pulled a long face and bluntly said, the little girl obtained the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron with her own ability. Our pill alliance had to bully others and force a sale to snatch the medicinal cauldron back from the little girl's hands. Is this honorable if word of it gets out? Does it make the pill alliance proud? You! Master Hua was momentarily at a loss for words. He flung his sleeves and turned his head away with a huff. At this time, the 2 medicine apprentices from Wuruan Pill House had already helped the disgraced Master Hong up and walked to Chen Huiran and Duan Yu's side. Master Hong's old face flushed red. His lips trembled as he said resentfully, I will not let this matter go. Whether it was in his family or in the Alchemy Guild, Hong Qing was a well-known figure. Who wouldn't salute him respectfully and call him Master Hong when they saw him outside? But it was such an unknown little girl who actually dared to talk nonsense to him and criticized his medicinal pills as worthless. He even said that even gifting it to a beggar was not good enough. It was simply infuriating. Chen Huiran sneered and said to Master Hua, I will return to the Alchemy Guild first. Hong Qing angrily glared at Qin Huiran's back as she left. He turned to Hua Feng and said, Master Hua, look at her attitude. You're just a mere mid-level alchemist in the Pill Alliance. How dare you be so rude to me, a high-level alchemist? Hua Feng persuaded Hong Qing and pulled him back because he felt that many people were looking at them on the street right now, which made him feel even more humiliated. However, a seed of hatred was planted in Hong Chang's heart. He felt that the stoic-faced little girl had trampled all over his dignity today. He would definitely seek revenge for such an insult in the future. After returning home from Arbor, she bid farewell to Mo Lien and Duan Yu and directly sent her 2 younger siblings back to their respective courts. She didn't take such a trivial matter to heart. After returning to Nanzhu Garden, she had long tossed that miscellaneous person beyond the highest heavens. Chapter 661. When she woke up the next day, Xiaoyao walked in with a big smile on her face, holding a small box in her hand. Miss, Xiao Yi came by just now. He received Lord's orders and said he wanted to give you something. The little fellow had just finished washing up. Hearing this, she stretched out her hand and gave a small yawn. She nodded and said, What is it? Finish the porridge first and fill your stomach. You can have lunch later. Xiaoyao handed her a small bowl of red date porridge and said with a smile. Xiaoyao, you were guarding outside the whole night. Yes, Mississippi. Xiaoyao nodded her head and took a small box and placed it on the table. Don't guard tonight, go to sleep. What danger can there be in your own home? Arbor put down the bowl that she had eaten 2 mouthfuls of porridge and took the small box that Xiaoyao had placed on the table. Opening it, her eyes slightly flashed. Inside the small box, there was a vermilion pill that was neatly placed. The pill veins were purple and the pill body was floating with extraordinary splendor. This beautifying pill is indeed a good thing. Arbor reached out her hand and stroked it. If she directly added something to it, it would be too much of a waste of this pill. How about Arbor pursed her lips and thought of another plan. With a "paw" sound, she closed the lid of the box and handed the small box back to Xiaoyao. Xiaoyao, give this beautifying pill to my mother for her to consume. Later, I'll make another one for myself. Originally, she wanted to directly tamper with this beautifying pill and then give it to that consort Jane to enjoy. But now, she changed her mind. Humph, such a good thing, naturally she couldn't let that woman take advantage of it. It was just right to show filial piety to her own mother. Yes, Mississippi Xiaoyao will go now and be back soon. Xiaoyao chuckled, took the small box and quickly walked out the door. Arbor continued to drink a few mouthfuls of red date porridge. With a move of her profound sense, the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron abruptly jumped out of her conscious and steadily landed on the floor of the room. In an instant, it grew to the height of half a person. Arbor recited the names of a few more medicinal herbs and had Chocho deliver them to her. After she finished eating the porridge, she slowly began to process the few medicinal herbs on hand. After removing the dregs, only the essence of the herb was left. Arbor tossed it into the cauldron, and the cauldron immediately changed. The red cauldron flame ignited on its own, and the red copper cauldron instantly became transparent. The medicinal cauldron slowly rotated, and the star on the cauldron that was emitting a stream of light suddenly lit up. This beautifying pill that she had added a touch of the pure heat poison nether star seed should taste extremely good. Arbor supported his chin with one hand and glanced at the cauldron. He couldn't help but curl his lips in satisfaction. This cauldron normally looked very unremarkable, but unexpectedly, it was very beautiful when refining pills. The entire red copper cauldron had become transparent, and she could even clearly see the style of the fire control inside the cauldron. The fire control was very perfect, and the cauldron automatically made an accurate judgment based on the degree of burning of the herbs. This meant that she didn't need to constantly watch from the side and constantly control the fire, saving her a lot of time and energy. Miss Chiao was a bit happy. Sure enough, a good cauldron was twice the result with half the effort on the path of refining pills. With such a comparison, her set of lousy medicine refining tools could really be thrown to the back of her mind. Miss Chow leisurely walked to the small table beside the bed and sat down. She took out a pure white jade communication tablet from her inner world and drew a few strokes on it with a talisman brush. In a flash, both the Hidden Pavilion and the Night Pavilion received a message from their mistress. Spread the news that Morning Sunlight Pavilion will publicly auction the exceptional beautifying pill in 3 days. Chapter 662. Ding. A faint sound came from inside the cauldron. From the moment the herbs were put in to the moment the pill was formed, Arbor didn't even need to poke a finger. It was also because this beautifying pill was only a high-grade pill that Arbor didn't need to use mystic energy to increase the heat. In half a cup of tea's time, the pills were formed. This kind of speed made Miss Chow very satisfied. With a sweep of her sleeve, a faint fragrance followed the 2 pills that jumped out of the cauldron, assailing her nostrils. As soon as Wei Ziqin stepped through the door, she took a deep breath of the fragrance. With a flushed face, she cried out in pleasant surprise, "Daughter! You're refining pills. Did mother disturb you?" Arbor couldn't help but want to facepalm. She always felt that her mother was unusually happy that she could refine pills. "Mother, I've already finished refining." Arbor directly recalled the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, which had extinguished its own cauldron fire, into her conscious. She put the 2 beautifying pills that had just come out of the cauldron and added ingredients into 2 exquisite wooden boxes. TSK, she only wanted to make 1 beautifying pill with added ingredients. She didn't expect the cauldron to make 2 for her. Wei Ziqin hurriedly jogged over and took one of the wooden boxes to look at it happily. Her mouth kept muttering, "Daughter, this pill is really well refined." Looking at this pill, it was sparkling white and translucent, small and exquisite. There was a faint purple pattern on the pill's body that flickered with light. As an amateur, she felt very happy looking at it. "Mother." Arbor helplessly helped her mother to sit down. In passing, she took the wooden box from her mother's hands and put it together with the other wooden box into her inner world, so as to prevent it from being carelessly placed and accidentally eaten. Jojo, this beautifying pill that you gave mother, why don't you keep it for yourself? Wei Ziqin took out a small box from her pocket and said, Mother is already so old, what need is there for beautifying? Mother, look, I can refine it myself. Those 2 pills just now were both beautifying pills. You can have as many as you want. This pill is for you to eat, so hurry and consume it. It's also beneficial to your body. Xiao Mu poured a cup of tea while urging her mother to consume it. Wei Ziqin chuckled as she glanced at her daughter. Then, she complied and swallowed the beautifying pill. Mother, the effect of this beautifying pill is somewhat similar to the gradual improvement of a person's appearance. The effect is not immediate. But slowly, after a month, 2 months, 3 months, you'll realize that your white hair is gone, and the fine wrinkles on your temples will also disappear. Your skin will become smoother, and your body will also have strength. Xiao Mu held her mother's arm, and the mother and daughter pair chatted merrily for a while. Wei Ziqin laughed heartily at her daughter's teasing. She poked her daughter's forehead and said, You mischievous girl, you just like to cajole your mother. When the mother and son were in a good mood. On the other side, in State Uncle Zhang's estate, Xing Chao was currently throwing a fit at second manager Qi. What are you doing? How did the meat that was about to be in our hands fly away? A middle-aged man with a slightly pointed chin and a goatee wearing a cyan brocade robe paced back and forth in the living room with his hands clasped behind his back. Second manager Qi sprawled on the ground and said meekly and pitifully, This subordinate also doesn't know how this happened. This subordinate just brought people to that merchant overnight, but they were all in vain. Later, when I asked around in the neighborhood, I found out that the merchant had already moved out overnight and even sold the beautifying pill to Morning Sunlight Pavilion. Xing Chao went up and gave second manager Qi a kick. Useless dog slave. Tell me yourself, how are you going to explain this to Consort Jing? Chapter 663. This wretched servant, he didn't even settle the matter properly and was eager to claim credit in front of Consort Jing. Otherwise, there would still be room for negotiation. Second manager Qi hastily said with a bitter expression, Her Majesty already knows about the beautifying pill. We must get the beautifying pill for her no matter what. Xing Chao's heart ached at the thought of going to Morning Sunlight Pavilion to bid for it at a high price. A few deep wrinkles appeared on his forehead, and Xing Chao's voice turned cold as he said, What can a mere Morning Sunlight Pavilion do if I insist on them handing over the beautifying pill? Second manager Qi shuddered violently, and the cold sweat on his head fell with a splash. Master, you absolutely can't do this. This servant heard that Morning Sunlight Pavilion's backer is extremely powerful. Do you still remember 2 years ago when the Hong Estate's concubine's son caused trouble at Morning Sunlight Pavilion and was chased out with a broken leg? That Hong Estate's concubine's son was beaten for nothing, and the Hong Estate couldn't get justice at all. It said that the concubine's son is still half paralyzed even now. The other party can even touch a century-old Hong Estate, not to mention an aristocratic family like ours that has just established a foothold in the capital. Second manager Qi hastily mediated. Xing Chao's brows furrowed tightly. He had also heard about this matter. That old madam of the Hong Estate was said to be the sister of the current Empress Dowager. The entire Hong Estate was related to the Empress Dowager by marriage, yet they dared to make a move at Morning Sunlight Pavilion and let people come in and out without being able to find fault with them. Such a powerful force indeed couldn't be easily provoked. Sigh. Xing Chao sighed, feeling somewhat defeated. Qi Ming, this beautifying pill, no matter the price, we have to get our hands on it before we talk about anything else. Sister has been demoted to consort, so she must be in a bad mood recently. If we choose to go against her wishes at this juncture, our Jing estate will definitely be blamed as well. Jing Chao understood this sister of his very well. If they went against her wishes in this matter, she would definitely remember it. She was a scheming person, and who knew when she would be promoted to consort again. After all, the great king had doted on his sister greatly all these years. How could old feelings be broken so quickly? Let the manor calculate how many profound stones we can use. It's said that Morning Sunlight Pavilion also collects rare colored glass gems. If you don't have enough magnetite, you can add on some amber-colored glass. Let's see if Morning Sunlight Pavilion will accept it. It's said that the Imperial Court wants to create a kind of profound coin for circulation. It's made from profound stone, so maybe it'll be more convenient for transactions in the future. Jing Chao sighed again. If you really can't do it, you can go to the rooms of the various young ladies and young masters and see if there are any profound armaments that you can sell to Morning Sunlight Pavilion at a discount. Hopefully, it won't come to that. A small beauty pill shouldn't have a sky-high price. He just hoped that the day of the auction would go smoothly and that there wouldn't be so many people fighting over this beauty pill with them. The more Jing Chao thought about it, the more upset he felt. He simply flung his sleeves and threw this matter to second manager Qi to handle while he went out to find his concubine to relieve his boredom. Qi Ming scowled miserably and ran to the senior manager to ask for money, only to be berated by the senior manager. The Jing estate situation had been terrible for the past 2 years. Especially after the zombie outbreak, the estate's income was barely enough to make ends meet. Relying on the old master's meager salary from the imperial court, it was not enough to support the operation of the estate. In addition, there were many people in the Jing estate, including all sorts of concubine-born children. Other than 6th young master, all of them were gluttonous and lazy. It was over. Chapter 664. Qi Ming followed the senior manager to the accounts room. After settling the accounts, there really weren't many magnetite available in the estate that could be used. There were only a dozen or so pieces of high-grade magnetite and about 100 pieces of mid-grade magnetite. With the addition of a box of colored glass gems, Qi Ming's confidence was lacking, so he could only report this matter to Jing Chao. Jing Chao's one sentence caused chaos in the concubines' rooms. Things like the 5th young master was going to hang himself after stealing the 5th young master's mystic weapon, and the 3rd young miss was going to commit suicide after taking the 3rd young miss's private jewelry. Jing Chao was infuriated by the series of minor incidents that happened in the Jing estate over the past 3 days. He ordered that anyone who continued to cause trouble would be kicked out of the Jing estate. After the pressure was suppressed, although the entire Jing estate was silent, those concubines and young misses were secretly wiping their tears in their own courtyards all day long. Each and every one of them cried to the heavens and the earth, saying that they couldn't live anymore and that in the future, they would have to beg for food on the streets and so on. This caused the servants in the estate to secretly laugh as they watched the good show of their masters. Jing Chao spent the past 3 days in this vexed state until Morning Sunlight Pavilion's auction today. He decided to bring second manager Qi with him to personally make a trip there. This was called cutting off all means of retreat and sinking all boats. He was determined to obtain the beautifying pill no matter what. He was already so miserable. If he still couldn't obtain the beautifying pill and curry favor with his sister, his future days would probably be even more miserable than they were now. Morning Sunlight Pavilion's auction date was always set at the beginning of the month. However, this time, it was a special auction for the precious beautifying pill, so the time was a bit arbitrary and it was set at noon. It had to be said that this beautifying pill was really quite popular. All the noble ladies in the capital had sent people to inquire about it. Even if they didn't have the ability to bid for it, they still sent people to participate in this grand auction today. Xing Chao entered the auction house with second manager Qi, and his eyelids couldn't help but twitch when he saw the hall full of people. Fuck, so many people. They couldn't all be here for the beautifying pill, right? Inside the exclusive luxurious private room on the second floor, Arbor had already run over with his two younger siblings to occupy seats and watch the show. At this moment, the three siblings were chatting while munching on a small bag of melon seeds. Hui Feng coughed lightly and said, "Crown Princess, the Jing clan's people have come." Arbor got up and walked to the window. He looked down and saw a middle-aged man with a goatee. He was wearing a green robe and had his hands behind his back as he walked up the stairs to the second floor. "Have him go to the main hall." Arbor waved his small hand and turned to glance at Hui Feng. The corner of Hui Feng's mouth twitched, and he hastily turned to leave the private room to handle matters. "Sister, why do you care where he sits?" Only the three siblings were left in the private room. Xiao Lin muttered while cracking the sunflower seeds. "Let him sit in the box on the second floor." "How am I going to watch his expression change?" Arbor snorted. "Just wait and see. He's going to be so angry that he's going to vomit blood." The door to the private room suddenly opened, and Duan Yu and Mo Lian walked in one after another, followed by Situ Yi, who coughed lightly. Duan Yu raised his brows and asked with a chuckle, who was angered to the point of vomiting blood. "Xing Chao." Arbor pulled her two younger siblings to the side and gave up a seat for the three people. "Little junior sister, this is your true face." Situ Yi's praise immediately attracted Duan Yu's eye roll. "Brother Situ, you were most likely guessing at the Qin estate that day, right?" "Of course not. Little junior sister is so distinctive. Who wouldn't recognize her stoic face?" Chapter 665. Your senior brother Situ is spouting nonsense. Duan Yu turned to smile at Arbor. "He just guessed it." Situ Yi waved his hand. "Don't listen to Duan Yu's nonsense. Little junior sister, your expression has been the same for many years. I can see through it at a glance. Why would I need to guess?" Arbor reflexively touched his small face and thought, "Looks like I have to pay attention when I disguise myself next time. It's best if I can make an expressive face so that I won't be exposed immediately." Mo Lian couldn't help raising her brows when she saw the little fellow's pensive expression. "What are you thinking about with such a serious expression? You can't be thinking of making an expressive disguise face to fool me next time, right?" Duan Yu. Xiao Mu immediately turned her head away guiltily and walked over to open the door and walk out on her own. The quarrel at the top of the stairs grew louder and louder. Xing Chao was blocked on the stairs with his hands behind his back, so he was so angry that his face was turning green. The manager of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's capital branch was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He had a smooth and affable face and was quite eloquent in his speech. With just a few words, he made Xing Chao, who was about to explode, gasp for breath. "All of the private rooms upstairs have already been reserved. Others have already reserved them 3 days ago, so our Morning Sunlight Pavilion can't not play by the rules, right? The Song Estate second miss is also sitting in the main hall downstairs right now, so there's nothing we can do about it. It's just that too many people have come to participate in the auction this time." Xing Chao angrily flicked his sleeve. "Let's go." Xing Chao angrily led second manager Qi downstairs. He wished for nothing more than to immediately leave Morning Sunlight Pavilion and swagger away. They actually dared to make him, state Uncle Zheng, sit in the main hall and fight over the beautifying pill with a bunch of commoners. When he, Xing Chao, went to other auction houses, which one of them didn't deferentially wait on him and give him the best treatment? Unlike this Morning Sunlight Pavilion, who actually dared to treat him like this. It was simply preposterous. Second manager Qi was so anxious that he was about to cry. Lord, if we leave now, what should we do about the beautifying pill? Jing Chao was taken aback before he angrily retorted, buy it elsewhere. But they're only selling it here. Preposterous. Jing Chao's footsteps stiffened slightly. He stiffened his neck and mechanically turned around, following the bowing second manager Qi as he swallowed his anger and walked toward the front row of the lobby. Yo, State Uncle Zheng, nice to meet you. A person in the front row suddenly stood up and bowed to him with a flattering expression. It's Hong Qing from the Hong clan. Jing Chao glanced at him, and the corners of his mouth twitched into a fake smile. Then, he sat down beside Hong Qing. Is Lord Jing here to purchase the beautifying pill for Her Highness Jing? Hong Qing said with a polite smile, I'm also here to take a look at this beautifying pill that has been rumored to be somewhat miraculous. Jing Chao recalled that Hong Qing was also a senior alchemist, and could not help but ask, Grandmaster Hong's alchemy skills are said to be extraordinary, I wonder if you can refine this beauty pill. Hong Qing said proudly, refining the beautifying pill is naturally not a problem. However, State Uncle Jing did not know that the herbs needed to refine the beautifying pill were extremely hard to find. In particular, a senior medicinal herb called the look-setting Ganoderma is practically extinct on our Seacombe planet. Hong Qing sighed and said, otherwise, if Lord Jing could find this look-setting Ganoderma, I would definitely be able to refine a senior medicinal herb for Her Highness Jing. Chapter 666. Jing Chao nearly couldn't hold back his temper and spat all over his face. If I could freaking find the exotic herbs for that look-fixing Ganoderma, would I need you to refine the beautifying pill for me? Do you think you're the only high-level pill refiner in the pill union? How rare. Arbor closed the door and expressionlessly said, Jing Chao is sitting with that nuisance from the pill union. Which nuisance? The one who stole my cauldron. Mo Lien stood up and walked to the window. She looked down and chuckled. This person is from the Hong clan. What Hong clan, Rolan clan, I don't care who he is. He stole my cauldron first, and now he's sitting with Jing Chao. Anyway, he's a nuisance. Arbor pursed his lips. The capital's 8 great patrician families. This Hong clan is one of them, Duan Yu said. What 8 great patrician families? Arbor asked offhandedly. The Talisman patrician family, the Mu clan, the Elixir patrician family, the Qin estate, and Duan Yu's concealed weapons patrician family, the Duan clan. Mo Lien continued, aside from them, there's also the Wu clan, the Hong clan, and... The little fellow had long lost her patience to listen to those 8 great patrician families and ran to the window to look around. Mo Lien couldn't help but chuckle and shut her mouth. Forget it, it didn't matter if she remembered them or not. She would talk about it when she encountered them in the future. It's starting. When Hui Feng came in, he had someone bring in some snacks for the 2 little foodies. He then changed the tea to a new round of hot tea before ordering everyone to withdraw. Everyone chatted as they ate while observing the auction below. Apart from the beautifying pill, there were naturally other mystic weapons, high-grade jewelry, and the like. The items that Jing Chao plundered from his concubine's children were also on the auction list. These items had all been sent to the auction house 2 days ago, so Mo Lien was naturally very clear about them. After a rough calculation, the total amount that Jing Chao could take out was only around 50 pieces of high-grade magnetite when converted into magnetite. However, this was still considered quite a fortune. Even in peacetime, one could be considered a nouveau riche if they could take out 50 or so pieces of high-grade magnetite at once, not to mention that it was just to buy a beautifying pill. Not long after, the steward of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's Beijing branch, Lu Yan, knocked on the door and entered with a smile while carrying a tray. Your Highness, State Uncle Zhang wants to bid for a 500-year-old snow ginseng. Let me see. Arbor stretched out his small hand, and Lu Yen hurriedly handed over the tray. Arbor lifted the cover on the tray and examined the 500-year-old snow ginseng in his hand. Then, in front of everyone, he openly confiscated it. Lu Yan's mouth was slightly agape as he turned to look at the crown prince, who had his hand on his forehead. "Your Highness, your wife has gone too far." Very quickly, Cho carved out an identical 500-year-old snow ginseng and handed it over to her. "All right, go and return it to him." He told him that there was no such rule in the auction house, and that the auction items would be decided 2 days in advance. How could there be any last-minute additions? "Go and tell Jing Chao that we can't break the auction rules for him alone." Arbor spoke sternly and righteously. Lu Yan received the tray with a dazed expression and lowered his head to look at the snow ginseng. "Crown Princess, this snow ginseng is... Is there a problem?" "No, no problem. It would be strange if there wasn't a problem. Didn't the Crown Princess confiscate the snow ginseng just now? Why did she return it so quickly?" Our dear Crown Princess swept a disdainful glance at the snow ginseng. "I'm not interested in this kind of 100-year-old trash. Go and return it to him." "Yes, yes, yes." Chapter 667. After Steward Lu retreated, the private room was quiet. Her 2 sisters-in-law, 3 men, and 5 pairs of eyes stared at her without blinking. "What is it?" Arbor calmly returned their gaze. Whether it was the appearance or smell of the 500-year-old snow ginseng that Jojo gave Steward Lu, it was exactly the same as the one she'd confiscated earlier. But according to the little fellow's temperament, she wouldn't take something out of her inner world for no reason. Unless... May I ask what exactly is this 500-year-old snow ginseng that you exchanged with Sir Jing?" Duan Yu asked curiously. "A tonic." The little fellow propped her chin on her hand and stood by the window, admiring Sir Zheng's gloomy expression when the snow ginseng was returned. Lu Yan, this guy, was especially reliable. He even specially returned the item to Jing Chao in front of everyone and strongly requested him to inspect it once to ensure that there were no mistakes before leaving with his men. This waiter was outstanding. Our dear Chao Mu pursed her lips and nodded approvingly. Ahem. Situ Yi pretended to take a sip of tea and asked, "What tonic is it?" "White radish. It's especially good to eat in winter. Add some pork ribs to stew in a pot of soup and it's delicious. It's even more nutritious if it can be added to the dish with mutton," Arbor replied coolly. Pfft. Duan Yu was caught off guard and spat out his tea, coughing repeatedly as he choked. On the other hand, Situ Yi had just swallowed his tea, so he didn't spit it out. At this time, he was holding his teacup in exasperation as he stared fixedly at that child. Look at this scammer. She used a white radish to exchange for someone else's 500-year-old snow ginseng. Most importantly, she could actually make an identical 500-year-old snow ginseng and exchange it in such a short time. Not everyone could do this. No wonder Jing Chao was also so miserably tricked and took back the snow ginseng without the slightest suspicion. After all, the appearance and smell were exactly the same, and it was done in such a short time. Who could tamper with it like the little fellow? Chocho's control over plants could be said to be a heaven-defying fortune. Any plant in its hands could be moved horizontally or vertically, and it could do whatever it wanted with it. This caused the little fellow to feel somewhat puzzled for a while. What exactly was Chocho? What a magical tree! As they spoke, the climax of the auction arrived. When the auctioneer showered the beautifying pill with extravagant praises and announced the start of the auction, the price of the profound stones skyrocketed. It was only when the price reached 30 pieces of high-grade magnetite did the price slow down a little. Only 3 families were left on the stage, competing with each other for the right to bid. One of them was Xing Chao, the other was the family of the recently risen He Jiaoyi, and the third was an old nanny sent by a wealthy family. The three of them were in a stalemate. He Jiaoyi's family only announced that they would give up when the bidding price broke through 40 pieces of high-grade magnetite. However, the old granny sat there calmly and continued to raise the price. 43 pieces of high-grade profound stones, 44 pieces, 45 pieces. Jing Chao felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He couldn't help but fidget in his seat as cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Seeing this, Hong Qing hurriedly said in order to curry favor with State Uncle Zheng, "I saw that State Uncle was in a hurry to sell that snow ginseng of excellent quality, but the auction house didn't agree. How about this? I'll pay twice the market price to buy this snow ginseng from State Uncle." Chapter 668. The two immediately completed their private transaction. Hong Qing spent 24 pieces of high-grade magnetite to buy the white radish in Jing Chao's hand. Hong Qing had won State Uncle Zheng's favor. He spent some money to curry favor with State Uncle Zheng and also solved State Uncle Zheng's financial crisis. Both of them were very satisfied and became bosom buddies on the spot. Their conversation also became a little more casual. State Uncle Zheng had 78 pieces of high-grade magnetite in his hands now, so he was much more confident. He didn't even frown when he raised the bid and was rather forthright. When the bid reached 65 pieces of high-grade magnetite, the old nanny clearly paused. State Uncle Zheng sighed in relief and immediately called out in a loud voice, 68 pieces of high-grade magnetite. The entire venue was in an uproar. Everyone stared at this high-spirited State Uncle Zheng as if they were looking at a second-rate nouveau riche. As expected of the great king's brother-in-law. He was just so freaking extravagant. Look at how forthright he was when he raised the bid. 3 pieces at once. Everyone worshipped nouveau riche Xing, filling State Uncle Zheng's heart with arrogance. When the bid reached 70 pieces of high-grade magnetite, the old nanny finally gave in and fell silent. Everyone in the hall stood up and applauded enthusiastically. They cheered for State Uncle Zheng and loudly called out, "State Uncle Zheng, State Uncle Zheng." State Uncle Zheng's heart was thumping as he responded to the melon-eating crowd with smiles in his eyes. The auctioneer even gave a speech excitedly and enthusiastically. The atmosphere was at its most enthusiastic for a moment. The auctioneer's small hammer hit the auction stage again and again as he shouted passionately, 70 pieces of high-grade magnetite, going once. 70 pieces of high-grade magnetite, going twice. 70 pieces. 71. Arbor, who was sitting by the second-floor window, shouted irritably while cracking melon seeds. His icy voice cut into the crowd's excited cheers and instantly drenched everyone from head to toe like a basin of bone-chilling water, chilling their hearts. Arbor snorted and thought, "Are you all a bunch of idiots? As for clapping and cheering for State Uncle Zheng, what does it have to do with you melon-eating crowd when he bought a beautifying pill?" They even stood up and clapped their hands madly, loudly praising that idiot for having nothing better to do. Bam! State Uncle Zheng's legs went soft and he fell to the ground. Why? Oh heavens! It was not easy to get rid of that old nanny from who knows which mansion she came from, but where did this little fellow jump out and continue to bid? Pfft, ha 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 ha. Duan, you truly couldn't hold it in anymore. He laughed so hard that he collapsed on the armchair. Oh, you did it on purpose, didn't you? He purposely poured a basin of ice water at such an exciting moment. Ah ha 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 ha. He couldn't take it anymore. He was laughing so hard that tears were about to come out. Situi turned his face away. With one hand supporting his forehead, he laughed so hard that he slammed the table. On the other hand, Mo Lien calmly walked to Chow Mu's side and pulled over a stool to sit beside the window with her. The auctioneer stared blankly for a few seconds before continuing to shout in a professional manner, 71 pieces of high-grade magnetite, going once. Number. Wait. 72. Under second manager Chi's sharp reminder, State Uncle Jing finally recovered his wits and shouted again with a sullen face. 73, 74, 75, 76. Arbor continuously shouted. The melon-eating crowd all looked towards the second-floor window with dumbfounded expressions. However, they couldn't see Arbor's small face clearly from their angle. Chapter 669. State Uncle Zheng rubbed his hands anxiously and looked at his bosom friend, Hong Qing. How many magnetite do you have on you? Lend them all to me, and I'll return them to you later. Hong Qing was stupefied. He didn't expect that the 24 magnetite he sold to State Uncle Zheng for still wasn't enough for him to buy that beautifying pill. He wanted to refuse, but he was also afraid that State Uncle Zheng would bear a grudge against him. At this kind of life-and-death juncture, he had to put on a good performance. Hong Qing gritted his teeth and said, I can only take out another 15 pieces of high-grade magnetite at most. Give them all to me. I'll give the beautifying pill to Her Majesty later, and Her Majesty will definitely bestow rewards. Zheng Chao urged, take them all out right now. Hong Qing dug out all his assets as his heart bled. State Uncle Zheng staked everything on this one throw and stood up, shouting with a flushed face, 93 pieces of high-grade magnetite. 95. Arbor continued to bid. Hong Qing felt like the sky was about to collapse. Sure enough, State Uncle Zheng turned back and stared at him with bloodshot eyes. Hong Qing, you've helped me this time, so help me to the end. I'll definitely remember your kindness, and it won't be a problem for you to soar in the future. Hong Qing hesitated for a moment before steeling himself and saying, I only have 10 pieces of high-grade magnetite left. I really don't have any more. State Uncle Zheng also gritted his teeth and said angrily, 103 pieces of high-grade magnetite. If I still can't buy it, I won't buy it anymore. This time, the little fellow didn't make a sound and continued to crack her melon seeds. Are you sure those two have been squeezed dry? Seeing Hui Feng enter, the little fellow only raised her head slightly and asked. Hui Feng's mouth twitched. This subordinate guarantees that those two are so poor that they can pawn their pants. All right then. Arbor spread his small hands. Take these high-grade magnetite and distribute it to those who need it. Hui Feng was startled and quickly turned to look at the Crown Prince. Seeing the Crown Prince nod, Hui Feng's expression became abnormally excited all of a sudden. Yes. Thank you, Crown Princess, for your reward. 103 pieces of high-grade magnetite. Going thrice. Sold. Congratulations, congratulations, Lord Jing. Congratulations on obtaining a beautifying pill. State Uncle Zheng sat there as if he had just lost a loved one. There was not the slightest bit of joy on his face that was twisted with anger. Right now, all he wanted to do was to take his things home, hug his blanket, and cry. For the sake of Her Highness Zheng's face, the entire Zheng estate had gone all out this time. State Uncle Zheng's hands trembled as he picked up the small box containing the beautifying pills. He abruptly raised his head and shot a torch-like gaze toward the window on the second floor. Right now, he really wanted to know who had jumped out to compete with him. Judging from the voice, it was definitely a young lady. Right now, he wanted to cut this girl into 1,000 pieces and put her to death. Unfortunately, the other party didn't show up, and he didn't want to stay here for even a second longer. After leaving Morning Sunlight Pavilion, State Uncle Zheng instructed the two subordinates behind him with a ferocious expression, you two stay here and keep an eye on her. If that woman from the private room on the second floor comes down, find a way to follow her home. This little bitch who dared to provoke him, he wanted her to pay the price. The two extremely vicious thugs from the Zheng estate nodded repeatedly in response. Unfortunately, they didn't see any lady come out from the door even when the lanterns were lit. Arbor had returned home early with his sister-in-law. He had already finished eating and was about to take a level 11 mystic breakthrough pill. Suddenly, he heard shuffling sounds from the door. I'll add more chapters today and tomorrow, but I'll add later. Chapter 670. The little fellow's hair stood on end, and a bad premonition slid through her heart. That rustling sound made her stare at the door vigilantly. As expected, she saw a white and soft little snake slithering in from the door. A pair of watery and round eyes looked at her adorably. The little snake carried an ugly floral cloth package and slithered around quickly. But before it could get close to the bed, it saw its little master jump up high. Don't come over. Arbor stood on the bed with a blanket draped over her, and her eyes stared at the restless white snake defensively. The little white snake hurriedly shook its body and threw the floral cloth package on the ground. Then, it retreated a few steps and coiled itself up like a piece of dung. It looked at its little master pitifully. Arbor sat down with the blanket wrapped around her, and her face was stern and serious. You're not allowed to sneak into my room in the middle of the night. The snake nodded its head pitifully, and the little white snake used its thin tail to poke the package on the floor. Arbor inexplicably felt that this little fellow was a little cute. Then, she subconsciously reached out and rubbed the goosebumps on her little paws. Cute your sister. She didn't even know if a cold snake was poisonous. How could it be cute? An illusion. It must be her own illusion. She mustn't be moved by that snake's pretending to be weak. Move away a little. Arbor jumped off the bed and waved her little hand at the snake. The little white snake rolled itself into a ball of white dough and rolled under the corner of the table. It stuck its little head out and looked at its little master with watery eyes. Arbor tentatively took 2 steps forward. Seeing that it didn't move, she was relieved and boldly took a few steps forward. Then, she squatted down in front of the floral cloth package. This time, the little white snake used the Cosmos treasure pouch to bring over a lot of medicinal herbs. Previously, when its little master was in a good mood when collecting medicinal herbs, it had left a deep impression on it. The little snake preliminarily confirmed that compared to gold, silver, and jewelry, its master seemed to like medicinal herbs more. Arbor also felt a little strange. He didn't know where the little snake had gotten so many different types of spirit flowers and plants. A very rare medicinal ingredient used to refine the beautifying pill, the look-setting Ganoderma, was also found for her by this snake. You don't have to bring them back in the future, Arbor said casually as he tossed all the herbs in his Cosmos treasure pouch to Cho-Cho. When she turned around, she saw the little white snake looking at her aggrievedly like a little wife. Its eyes were about to burst into tears. Now, even bringing over herbs that Master liked was disdained. Sob. Arbor was baffled. He couldn't understand what little snake was trying to express with his resentful face. She only said calmly, I have enough herbs for now. I don't know where you plucked them from, but after plucking so many of them, no matter how good the land is, it will eventually dry up. Let them grow well. The little white snake's resentful expression immediately disappeared, and it looked at Arbor with its pair of big, cute eyes. So the little master didn't dislike its herbs. Wasn't this cold-blooded snake's facial expression a little too rich? After Arbor finished collecting the herbs, she climbed onto the bed and raised her hand to yawn. I'm going to rest. The little white snake rolled itself into an even smaller ball of dough and shrank under the cupboard. It had an I won't disturb your rest look on its face. Chapter 671. Arbor glanced at the snake and thought for a bit before walking down. She took a small basket covered in cotton wool and walked to the corner of the table. "Stay here and don't crawl around. You're not allowed to climb onto my bed." The little white snake nodded its head repeatedly and obediently moved its body. It curled up into a ball inside the small basket. Seeing that it was quite obedient, Arbor finally relaxed. She flipped onto the bed and pulled the covers over herself to sleep. The next morning, the first thing Arbor did when she woke up was to check on the snake. The little white snake obediently stayed in the small basket and didn't move at all. It was still in the same ball shape as yesterday. Seeing her look over, the little snake poked its head out of the basket. Arbor saw that it had stayed there the entire night without any signs of coming out. Her brows couldn't help but loosen a bit. This little snake wasn't as annoying as she had imagined. Mississippi Xiao Yao lifted the curtain and hurried in. She bowed and said, "Wu family's eldest Miss, Wu Xiaosu, requests an audience." Arbor had long forgotten about this person. Hearing this, she frowned and said, "I won't see her. I don't know her." Xiao Yao knew that her young mistress would react this way. She smiled and said, "Xiao Yao has already tactfully rejected Miss Wu and asked Miss Wu to return to the manor as soon as possible. It's a pity that Miss Wu won't listen to me. She's standing outside the Marquis's estate right now and won't leave no matter what." "Then let her be," Arbor said expressionlessly. "If someone likes to stand outside, then let her stand." Was she, Arbor, the kind of person who would hastily bring people in for the sake of the two families' reputation? The more she was threatened, the more she loathed it. If she wanted to embarrass herself, no one could stop her. She could stand outside as long as she wanted. "Where's Xiao Yi? Let him in. I want to ask him about yesterday's incident at the Jing estate." Arbor put the small basket on the table and met the little white snake's round eyes. Xiao Yao exclaimed, "Miss," a snake entered the room. Arbor looked at her in amusement. "This is my summoned beast." "Summoned beast?" Xiao Yao was a little surprised. That day, Miss summoned it in the garden. Then the summoning didn't fail. It's just that this little snake doesn't look mighty or ferocious at all. Will it be of use at a crucial moment? The little snake stared at Xiao Yao with its human-like eyes. "It's the one who's been giving me gifts for the past 2 days, Arbor said. Xiao Yao's eyes widened when she heard that. She raised her hand to show her height. "That red coral." "That's right, and the rest of the herbs were all given by it." Xiao Yao immediately looked at Lord Snake in worship, as if she was looking at a nouveau riche. "Then, miss, should I go prepare some frogs, mice, or something to feed the little snake?" Unexpectedly, the moment she said that, the little white snake immediately turned its little head proudly and disdainfully. Its pair of watery eyes looked pitifully at Arbor. Qiaomu glanced at it and asked on a whim, "Do you want congee or not?" The little snake nodded its little head furiously. "What kind of snake is this? It doesn't eat living things but actually drinks porridge. It's so human-like." Xiao Yao muttered as she walked out and called in Xiao Yi, who was waiting outside the door. "Crown Princess." Xiao Yi bowed after entering the door. "What happened after yesterday?" Arbor asked curiously. State Uncle Jing sent the beautifying pill into the palace overnight and presented it to Her Highness Consort Jing. "I'll see you tomorrow, Bo." Chapter 672. Arbor nodded his little head in satisfaction. "He must be very happy, right?" "That's right." Xiao Yi said. Consort Jing rewarded State Uncle Jing quite a bit on the spot, including fine jade, jewelry, gold, silver, and riches. However, the value of those things paled in comparison to the 103 high-grade magnetite that State Uncle Jing took out. Lord Jing could only suffer in silence, unable to voice out his bitterness, and returned to his residence listlessly. Arbor sneered. Just let Young Heat slowly enjoy that beautifying pill. When Xiao Yao returned with a bowl of porridge, Xiao Yi had already retreated as per the order. A light thud came from the window. Arbor didn't even turn his head as he stared at the little white snake whose head was almost buried in the bowl of porridge. This little snake was especially particular when it ate. After the entire bowl of millet porridge entered its mouth, it even raised its little head and used its eyes to signal Xiao Yao to take a white cloth from the side to wipe it. Xiao Yao muttered, "What the hell?" as she hurriedly took a white cloth to wipe the snake's head. Arbor couldn't help but chuckle. The next second, she felt her body lighten, and she landed in a comfortable and warm embrace. "Jojo, I knocked on the window, but you ignored me," Mo Lien grumbled aggrievedly. "Even if I ignored you, didn't you still come in?" Arbor turned to shoot him a glance and poked his chest. "When are we leaving for Bailon?" "In 2 days, I guess." After I told Royal Father about this, he strongly objected. "I have to convince him." "What is he objecting for?" "You're not going to Bailon to play, you're going to inspect the food base. That's a serious matter that concerns the country and its people. He keeps you tied up in the palace all day and makes you represent him in state affairs. He really has it easy being this great king." Mo Lien chuckled softly. He reached out to cup his darling's little face and looked at her carefully. "Jojo, you're feeling sorry for your husband." Arbor rolled his eyes at him and poked him hard with his little finger. "We'll set off in 3 days at the latest." "All right." Mo Lien wrapped his arms around her waist and swayed her slender body. "I'll listen to you." His gaze met with the little white snake's round eyes. Mo Lien's expression changed slightly. Her hand shot out like lightning to grab the white snake. However, in the blink of an eye, the little white snake flashed through the air like a bolt of lightning. Its body suddenly shrunk to less than an inch, and it swiftly dodged Mo Lien's claw. "Ha!" Arbor's eyes widened slightly. This white snakelet could actually shrink into such a small form and successfully and swiftly evade Mo Lien's claw. "Master! There are bad guys here who want to catch me." The white snakelet twisted its body and swiftly flew towards Xiao Mu. Arbor instinctively shrunk her body and hurriedly hid her 2 little hands in Mo Lien's arms. In the blink of an eye, she saw the little white snake writhing its small body in the middle of pouncing on her. It suddenly stopped in mid-air and looked at her pitifully with tears in its eyes. Ah! Why did it feel like she had bullied a snake? But it was cold and crooked. It didn't feel good to the touch. She didn't want to touch it from the bottom of her heart. "Master," the little white snake's big, cute eyes actually started to tear up. "Arbor. You're a cold-blooded animal. Why are you like a human? You have 7 emotions and 6 desires and you can even cry." Mo Lien immediately looked warily at the stupid snake that was trying to act cute. With a tap of her finger, a bewitching red light shot toward the cold-blooded animal. The light was about to hit the little white snake's skin. Xiao Mu abruptly jumped up. Chapter 673. Mo Lien, don't bully it. Xiao Mu abruptly jumped up and stretched out her small paws to hug that stupidly adorable white snake that had stiffened in midair. She watched as it froze in midair like an idiot and saw that Mo Lien's cluster of flames was about to pounce on its body. If it was roasted like this, it would turn into a crispy snake. "Master!" The white snake's watery amber eyes revealed deep admiration. It twisted its body and was about to take advantage of the situation to burrow into Jojo's clothes. Mo Lian's eyes were sharp and her hands were fast. Taking advantage of the fact that the snake was unprepared, she clamped its head between her hands and casually flung it. With a whoosh, the white snake flew in a perfect arc in the air and was directly thrown out of the half-opened window by Mo Lian. Mo Lian's heart was stifled. Why did she have to guard against people and also beasts? Looking at the dazed look on the white snake's face, Mo Lian imagined it. It was obviously a lecherous snake. How could she leave it in her baby's room? Absolutely not. What are you doing? When Arbor saw that Mo Lian actually threw the pitiful white snake out of the window, she was speechless and helpless for a moment. Just as she was about to walk to the window, her little hand was pulled back by Mo Lian. Jojo, it's a male snake. You can't hide it in your clothes. Especially not on your chest. Mo Lian said with a serious face. Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes. I just wanted to take it and put it back in the basket. Now look, I don't know where you threw it. Mo Lian snorted and glanced at the door. It came back on its own. The white snakelet slithered up the table and gazed pitifully at Xiao Mu, tears dripping down from its large eyes. This thing pretending to be pitiful. Mo Lian was just about to pick it up and throw it away. Hence, Xiao Mu stretched out her hand to stop him. After glaring at him irritably, she lifted up that pitiful snakelet. What are you doing? Don't bully children. What little kid? He dared to bet with Duan Yu's head. This weak-looking little white snake was definitely an adult snake. Moreover, judging from the speed and strength it had hidden just now, one could tell that it was an exceptionally black-bellied fellow. Mo Lian's gaze coldly fell on the snake's head. Suddenly, the little white snake turned its head and fiercely glared at him. Damn, he was indeed a scheming snake. Hey, hey! He was glaring at him behind his baby's back. Sigh. Boys were all brave and fierce. Even a man could fight with a male snake. Xiao Mu placed the little white snake into the basket and stroked its head. Suddenly, his fingers paused. She abruptly discovered that this little white snake didn't feel icy cold to the touch. Instead, it felt as smooth and warm as a piece of beautiful jade. She clearly remembered the first time this snake appeared beside her bed. That kind of soft, greasy, and cold rubbing sensation gave her goosebumps. But now, what was with this warm feeling? Master, the little white snake's head rubbed against Arbor's finger back and forth with great enjoyment. The more student Mo Lian looked, the angrier he got. Alright, stop stroking. The more she stroked, the more excited this damn snake got. Mo Lian hastily pulled Arbor's small hand back and held it in his own as he pulled her outside. Come, accompany me to greet father and mother. Mo Lian's finger moved slightly, and an ink-colored ring silently hovered above his finger. Chapter 674. Arbor's eyes brightened slightly. He reached out to take the ring and put it on his finger. Once he activated his mystic energy, a transparent eggshell defensive barrier appeared around her. She could feel that the defensive power was much stronger than before. This defensive barrier had definitely been reinforced. Mo Lian. The little fellow tilted her head and reached out to hold his large palm. Mo Lian lowered his head slightly and lightly flicked her forehead. He lifted her up in an instant and looked deeply into her eyes with a smile. Do you want to return the favor? This husband will gladly accept it. Darling Qiao's little face was instantly dyed with a layer of red clouds, and she looked around with a guilty conscience. There's no one. Mo Lian laughed in spite of himself. Darling dislikes those annoying people who come in and out all day, so didn't Darling chase them all away? Only Xiao Yao is left, so she hid far away long ago. That's right, she had already chased them out of Nanju Garden. She wasn't a particular person and didn't need others to take care of her daily needs. Then give me a kiss as a return gift. Mo Lien turned his head and was about to press down on the little fellow's lips. Daughter, Papa Chiao shouted. The two separated immediately upon contact. Prince Mo's hand trembled and he almost dropped the baby in guilt. Our dear Chow Mu's face was as red as a tomato, and she couldn't help but lower her head. Prince Mo's heart felt even more stifled. My dear father. You really know how to pick the right time to come. Chow Zhongbang strode in as if he was flying. He immediately saw Prince Mo and his daughter standing on the left and right, leaving quite a bit of space between them. As a father, he was very satisfied. He knew that the crown prince wasn't someone who would mess around. Look, he was doing a surprise inspection this time. Little Mo, this child, was standing beside his daughter in a cultured and refined manner. He even maintained a distance from her. What a considerate child. The more he looked at him, the more he liked him. At this time, Papa Chiao had completely forgotten that the crown prince didn't even enter through the front door. He directly touched the back window and barged into the boudoir. Crown Prince. Father, don't be so courteous. Chow Chow and I just happened to be going to greet you and Mom, so let's talk on the way. Crown Prince Mo stealthily tugged at Chow Chow's small hand as he welcomed Chow Chow outside with a smile. Meanwhile, in the imperial study of the palace of the king, the great king smiled as he summoned the Qin estate's father and son trio. He waved his hand and said, Patriarch Qin, the two young masters Qin have been wronged. The crown prince is a careful and steady child. Most of the things that I did not consider thoroughly, he was able to handle them very well. The reason why so many soldiers have been dispatched to guard the estate is because they are worried that some unforeseen event will occur in the Qin estate. Great King is too serious. Qin Guelu hastily cupped his hands and said with a smile, Your Highness the Crown Prince's actions are exactly what this Qin wishes for. Now that the 10-day deadline was up, no one in the Qin estate had shown any signs of abnormalities. Everyone could see with a single glance that this was the case. Even if some zombies appear in the capital in the future, it shouldn't be blamed on our Qin estate. That's right, that's right. The great king chuckled and pointed at the seat in front of him. Patriarch Qin, please take a seat. Thank you, great king. Qin Guelu thanked him and sat down. First Qin and Omega Kotoku walked to stand behind their father with their heads slightly lowered. Xian present the box to the great king. Yes, father. First Qin walked forward and bowed slightly. He raised the treasure box above his head with both hands. The great king's face lit up, and a satisfied smile appeared in his eyes. He glanced at Gong Chang'an, who was standing to the side. Chapter 675. The latter hurriedly understood and hurriedly walked down the steps to take the box that eldest Qin presented. There are 3 meridian pacifying pills inside. The 50 strengthening pills are our Qin estate's offering to His Majesty as a token of our sincerity. Qin Guelu lowered his head slightly and said, This Qin is also very apologetic that His Highness the Crown Prince was startled at the Qin estate. Qin Guelu looked up, and Omega Kotoku walked out from behind his father. He opened a long box and presented it to the great king. The old great king looked down and grinned from ear to ear. This 400-year-old ginseng was obtained by chance when my son went out for training. Now, I present it to His Highness the Crown Prince as an apology gift. I hope that the great king won't dislike this Qin small token of appreciation, Qin Guelu said with a smile. Good, good, good. The great king nodded happily. Gong Chang'an, send someone to deliver this to the Eastern Palace. Since the Qin family was so tactful, the great king naturally removed their restraining order and unsealed the Qin estate. After placating Qin Guelu and giving him some rewards, he ordered someone to escort the 3 people from the Qin estate out of the palace. After leaving the palace, Qin Guelu wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and sighed in relief. "Where are you going?" Qin Guelu called out when he saw Omega Kotoku turn to leave. "You guys go back first. I have some matters to attend to." Omega Kotoku left these words coldly before swaggering off. Qin Guelu looked uneasily at Qin Xian. "Is second young master angry?" Qin Xian swept him a glance. Qin Guelu hurriedly added, "But I have no choice. After all, we're in the lower star domain right now, and it's not good to openly clash with the old great king of the Mo kingdom. I can only wrong eldest young master and second young master and throw some benefits to the old Mo king and resolve the problem at hand first." Qin Xian said with a spurious smile, "He's not angry. It's just that this time, you acted on your own initiative and even went for wool and came home shorn. It's a bit vexing." Qin Guelu stiffened, and he was inwardly shocked. They knew. "Don't tell me you think that Omega Kotoku hasn't noticed the little tricks that you and Shantian Mansion have done." Qin Guelu's cold sweat instantly dripped from his forehead. The secret exchange of pill recipes with Shantian Prefecture's Chio-san had been carried out behind the backs of those 2. But now, it had been exposed so blatantly. "Eldest young master, this subordinate surname is Qin. Born as a member of the Qin family, I will die as a ghost of the Qin family. I will never betray the Qin family. This subordinate was only. It was only because I coveted those few rare pill formulas that Master Chio-san provided that I repeatedly colluded with Chio-san for benefits." "Idiot." Qin Xian glanced coldly at Qin Guelu. "You don't even know that you're being used as a pawn. If it weren't for second brother helping you clean up the mess, do you think the Qin estate would have been able to extricate itself from the corpse puppet incident so quickly?" Qin Guelu's pupils contracted as he looked incredulously at eldest young Sir Qin. "Eldest young sir, please speak frankly. Do you know how many people that person sent to infiltrate the Qin estate to search for evidence? If it weren't for second brother erasing all the secret letters and correspondence that you colluded with Shantian Prefecture, you would have already been sent to prison. Perhaps your head would have already fallen to the ground." Eldest young Sir Qin nonchalantly spat out these words, but Qin Guelu's expression changed drastically, and his pupils contracted. "Why, you're talking about His Highness the Crown Prince." Qin Guelu turned pale with fright. "That man is vicious, merciless, and cold-hearted." Chapter 676. Qin Xian sneered. "Once he obtains evidence, the entire Qin estate won't be spared. Qin Guelu, be more careful in the future. You aren't his match." Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled and didn't say anything else. Leaving the dumbstruck Qin Guelu behind, he turned and floated away. Qin Guelu simply didn't expect that the 2 young sirs had already secretly exchanged blows with the Crown Prince. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and a wry smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It turned out that his little actions had all fallen into the young sir's eyes. To think that he had been so pleased with himself in the dark. Qin Guelu had to admit that he was old. These young children were truly each more ruthless than the other. Omega Kotoku sat in a carriage and coldly recited the name of a place. After the carriage set off, a large crowd of cheering girls rushed out from the corner of the street after hearing the news. They had all rushed over to watch the young sir of the Qin estate, but unfortunately, they were half a beat too late and only ate a mouthful of dust. The carriage stopped in front of a house, far away in a corner. The carriage driver didn't know what his master was waiting for, but he didn't dare to ask. He could only wait silently with his master. A small blue and white palanquin was parked in front of the residence's entrance. A young miss stood in front of the palanquin accompanied by a maidservant with a somewhat gloomy expression. Omega Kotoku was silently waiting for something inside the carriage, and that young miss was also waiting at someone else's door. After waiting for a full 3 hours, it was already past lunchtime. The carriage driver opened his mouth and carefully called out, "Second young sir." Then, he heard a creak from the other end, and the residence's main door was suddenly pulled open inwardly. 2 figures walked out of the door hand in hand, followed by a male and female bodyguard maidservant. Omega Kotoku's deep gaze locked onto the young lady who stepped out of the door first through the carriage's curtain, his aura gloomy. "Eldest Miss Xiao, is this your original appearance? That Mu Xiao Bao is also a fake name." Young Sir Omega Kotoku's cold gaze landed on Miss Xiao's small hand that the crown prince was holding, and he instinctively felt uncomfortable. How could he let another man hold her soft and delicate hand? It felt like something in the depths of Xiao Chen's heart had been torn apart, making him feel somewhat uneasy. Omega Kotoku stared coldly at the 2 men. The glint and shadow of the sword in his eyes were almost tangible. So much so that Arbor and Mo Lien both turned to look at the carriage. Separated by the thick curtain of the carriage, the 2 men's cold gazes met in a straight line. After a moment, Omega Kotoku clenched his fists. "Let's go home." For some reason, the coachman felt that the surrounding air seemed to have become a few degrees colder. It was already the 12th month of winter, so he couldn't help but sneeze several times. Rubbing his nose, he hurriedly got into the carriage and rushed back to the Qin estate. "Who's in the car?" Arbor asked curiously as he tugged at the prince's sleeve. "Irrelevant people." Mo Lien's gaze followed the carriage. After a moment, she retracted her gaze and lowered her head to look at Arbor. No need to pay attention to them. Arbor didn't pursue the matter. After eating, the 2 planned to go out for a stroll. She had just given him 4 ebony storage talismans filled with winter fruits. Speaking of the 50 winter fruit trees, it was a bit funny. Chio was like an idiot, insisting on accelerating their growth and harvesting the winter fruits. After picking a few rounds of fruits, she wondered if something had gone wrong with the trees. Chapter 677. Now that she was on the verge of death from Chio's torment, she reckoned that she would have to recuperate properly for a while. However, Chio had become increasingly spirited these past 2 days. Those unlucky winter fruit trees had been ruthlessly squeezed dry. A 12 cubic meter ebony blue storage talisman really couldn't store that many winter fruits. She had to store no less than 4 ebony talismans before she finally cleared out her overstock of winter fruits. The crown prince was also very astonished to obtain so many winter fruits to store, and he even hugged his Jojo and praised her. This time, Song Yuan of the Ministry of Revenue was going to be happy. Official Song, who originally came to him every day to complain about being poor, had already started repeatedly slandering him these past few days, instigating him to make an example of his father's harem and suggesting that the harem's expenses be reduced. This could also be considered a solution. Right now, the common people of the Mo Kingdom capital were almost unable to fill their stomachs, while the great king's harem were all exceedingly extravagant. If they could reduce their expenses, they would definitely be able to save a large amount of expenses. Miss Xiao. Suddenly, a round-faced maidservant blocked their path with a flushed face. You, how can you turn a blind eye to our miss?" As it turned out, after the 2 left, they didn't even glance at that Miss Wu in front of the palanquin and were just about to leave hand in hand. This time, they were blocked by that maidservant. Glancing to the side, they saw that Miss Wu was dressed in pink and white with a thin fur coat draped over her shoulders and a delicate hairpin inserted into her hair. Braving the cold wind, she stood next to the small palanquin, her small face slightly flushed from the wind, her eyes filled with faint grievance. Impudent! Hui Feng reprimanded, a mere maidservant actually dares to block the path of the crown prince and crown princess. Why don't you kneel in greeting after seeing his highness? That maidservant quivered in fright and immediately knelt on the ground, her shoulders trembling as she said, "This servant has been impolite. Greetings to the crown prince and crown princess. Seeing that you are loyal to your master, I won't bicker with you. Withdraw," Arbor coldly ordered. That maidservant hastily crawled 2 steps back and obediently knelt on the side, not daring to get up. Wu Xiaosu couldn't help but clench her cold fists tightly under her sleeves. With a stiff expression, Wu Xiaosu stepped forward and bowed to the crown prince. "Xiaosu greets your highness and Miss Qiao." Prince Mo's slender eyebrows involuntarily furrowed as he coldly reprimanded her in a low voice, "Don't you know to call her the crown princess?" Wu Xiaosu's fingers under her sleeves were almost broken. She shrank back and knelt on the ground. She lowered her head and said respectfully, "Xiaosu thinks so." Miss Qiao had yet to be married to his highness. Such an overstep of her status to address Miss Qiao in such a manner was likely to ruin her reputation. "Xiaosu has been taught by my mother since young, so I don't dare to lose my sense of propriety and ruin Miss' reputation." What a sharp tongue! The crown prince sneered. "Are you accusing this crown prince of lacking propriety? It's Xiaosu who is inarticulate and doesn't know how to speak properly. I've angered your highness. I hope your highness can forgive me." Wu Xiaosu knelt in front of Prince Mo and raised her pitiful face, aggrieved tears threatening to roll down her cheeks. "All right, it's just a form of address. Darling Qiao really wasn't that particular." She tugged at the crown prince's hand and said, "Let's go. Are we still shopping or not? Why bother with her?" Only then did Prince Mo retract his gaze and pull on Arbor's small hand in displeasure. Just as he turned around, he heard Miss Wu call out, "Miss Qiao, please wait." Chapter 678. A trace of impatience flitted across Arbor's brows. Was she very familiar with her? She came to visit her out of the blue and didn't even have an invitation. Where were the rules and etiquette she kept talking about? Was this the etiquette taught by her Wu family? "Miss Qiao, previously, because of me, Madame Qiao and second Miss Qiao suffered a bit of a fright. This is just a small token of my respect." Wu Xiaosu walked briskly to Arbor's side and suddenly took out a long box from her inner world, handing it over to Arbor. "What do you mean?" Arbor felt that this woman was very baffling. Wu Xiaosu nodded slightly at her and said with a smile that didn't show her teeth, "If I hadn't delayed your mother for a while at Dongshan Gate, perhaps they would have left long ago and wouldn't have encountered the black-clothed men's pursuit." "You're here to apologize to my mother?" Arbor asked coldly. Wu Xiaosu was startled and barely managed to quell the anger in her chest. She thought to herself that this Qiao family's eldest miss was too blunt in her speech. How was this an apology? She was just using an excuse to visit this eldest Miss Qiao and get closer to her in passing. Was this eldest Miss Qiao an idiot? How could she be so ignorant of the ways of the world? She couldn't even discern this kind of polite greeting. Who didn't know? Even if she, Wu Xiaosu, hadn't stopped Madame Qiao outside Dongshan Gate, the mother and daughter pair would still have met with danger, all right? How was this an apology? According to the rules, if she came to other families' young ladies to express goodwill, shouldn't they immediately let her in first? "Since you're here to apologize to my mother, why must you insist on standing outside my door and insist on seeing me? You can go find my mother yourself." What a baffling woman. Wu Xiaosu was so angry that her hands, which were holding the long box, couldn't help but tremble slightly. If she could, she really wanted to give this stoic face a big slap. Can you freaking understand the ways of the world? Don't you want others to lose face by speaking like this to a guest who came to your door? The corner of Prince Mo's mouth twitched slightly. He glanced at Miss Wu and held back his laughter as he turned his face away. Arbor saw that Wu Xiaosu's lips were trembling and she was frozen in place without saying a word. He looked at her impatiently and said, "Is there anything else? If there's nothing important, then don't block the way. We still have things to do. Since you've already said so, what else can I do?" Wu Xiaosu clenched her fists tightly under her sleeves and moved to the side mechanically to make way for them. She watched as Arbor and the Crown Prince swaggered off. Her eyes seemed to be burning with fury. This was the result of her waiting from morning until afternoon. She hadn't even taken a step into the Qiao family's house. Good. This big Miss Qiao was truly formidable. Without meeting her, he would not have known that this person was actually such a ruthless character who was impervious to everything. At such a young age, he was very scheming. Wu Xiaosu thought that Arbor's entire person was a conspiracy. She believed that this big Miss Qiao deliberately gave her the cold shoulder in front of the Crown Prince all morning. Then, she ruthlessly brushed her aside in front of the Crown Prince and completely shut the door on her. Did she think that she would give up just like that? Her mind was filled with her aunt's earnest exhortations. "You must become good sisters with big Miss Qiao of the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate." How could she have known that Miss Qiao was completely baffled by her? A total stranger suddenly came to seek an audience with an appearance of deep sisterly love. Didn't she find it funny? Chapter 679. Young Master. On the way, a ghost-like figure silently appeared in the carriage and bent down to salute. "Did you wipe it clean?" Omega Kotoku asked softly, her voice as cold as iron. "Yes." Omega Kotoku nodded, and her gaze shifted to that person's shoulder. A dark red spot was seeping through the black clothes. "You fought with someone?" "Yes." That person's mouth widened, and his eyes revealed a bloodthirsty intent. But the person who fought with this subordinate didn't end up well either. His injuries were more severe than mine. Heh, he probably won't make it past tonight. Omega Kotoku nodded slightly and then had the person leave the carriage. "Mu Xiaobao, you want to run away so irresponsibly after provoking this young master." The teacup at Omega Kotoku's fingertips suddenly turned into powder. That was impossible. Arbor reached out to rub his slightly itchy nose. Mo Lien then grabbed his small hand and rubbed it. Cold. What cold? She was a mystic cultivator. How could she be cold in such a chilly winter day? It didn't matter even if she wore an unlined garment. But if she really wore an unlined garment outside, not to mention the Crown Prince, her parents would be the first to nag at her non-stop. It was sunny after the snow, and there were quite a lot of people on the streets today. The two people strolled aimlessly on the streets for a while, quietly enjoying the slow flow of time. However, the good times didn't last long. A wail broke the peace on the streets, and the pedestrians hastily dodged. The sound of shouting and whips, accompanied by a woman's cries and screams, quickly caused the streets to be in chaos. The Crown Prince lowered his head and took out a jade communication talisman from his sleeve. When he saw the small characters that appeared on it, his expression darkened. "Jojo, I need to return to the pavilion to take a look. I'll send you back first." "What's wrong?" Aoyi got a bit injured. Arbor suddenly raised a brow. "Aoyi got injured. Can I go with you?" The Crown Prince was slightly startled. Then, he smiled and said, "It's even better if you go with me. How could I forget that not only is my Jojo an alchemist, his medical skills are even better. Can you let me know the location of the pavilion?" Arbor blinked. "What are you talking about?" I don't have any secrets in front of you. Just ask me directly if you want to know anything. Besides, you're the mistress of the Hidden Night Pavilion. You can go anywhere. The Crown Prince squeezed her hand. Let's go. Xiao Mu nodded. Just as the two of them were about to leave hand in hand, they saw a sobbing woman running toward them while hugging a child. Seeing that she was about to fall headfirst into Xiao Mu's body, the Crown Prince hastily caught his darling by the waist and dodged to avoid that impetuous woman. As a result, the woman, who was carrying a child, fell heavily to the ground with a thud. The child in her arms groaned a couple of times and burst into tears. You bitch, you still dare to run. The man's angry curses were mixed with the sound of a whip slicing through the air, instantly landing on the woman's head. Smack! When the whip landed diagonally on the woman's back, the man's hand clearly stiffened, as if he didn't expect this whip to land so easily. The woman grimaced in pain as she hugged the child. She rolled towards the Crown Prince's feet. This miss, please be kind and help us mother and son. According to the routine, the rich miss would definitely sympathize with the mother and son's misfortune. Who would have expected that the little stoic, the 8th watch ended today? Chapter 680. Beat! Arbor ordered. Huifeng's mouth twitched, and he immediately reflexively slapped the man holding the whip. Paw! With a slap, the unlucky man holding the whip fell to the ground with a thud. Thank you, miss, for saving me. Thank you, thank you. This commoner is. The woman holding the baby wept as she knelt in front of the Crown Prince and repeatedly thanked him. Continue. Xiao Mu was unable to move her limbs from being hugged by the Crown Prince, so she turned her head to say to Weifeng, hit. Both man and woman. The onlookers, who were originally watching the drama of a beauty saving the weak mother and child, were instantly thrown into disarray. What was going on with this eldest miss? Wasn't she saving someone? Why did she want to beat the injured woman as well? Why was the brain circuit of a rich family's daughter so different from that of a normal person? Arbor patted the Crown Prince's chest and had him put him down. He snatched the whip from the man's hand and threw it to Weifeng. Beat! 50 lashes each. Everyone. Even if the county magistrate was handling a case, he wouldn't give each person 50 lashes. Where did this monster come from? The Crown Prince couldn't help but facepalm. The scene was a bit tragic for a moment. The woman and man both screamed miserably on the street and rolled on the ground in pain under Huifeng's whips. They crawled and wailed, clutching their heads and trying to flee like rats. Xiao Mu didn't even bat an eyelid as she accepted the child that Xiaoyao carried over. She reached out to check his pulse, lifted up the child's eyelids to take a look, and then fished out a pill for him to consume. At the same time, he flicked his fingertips, and 2 talismans instantly turned into 2 streaks of light that pounced on the man and woman. Who sent you? Arbor coldly looked at the sobbing woman and curled his lips in mockery. Don't beat, miss, don't beat. The woman had only wailed 2 sentences in her sobbing state before her entire body quivered, and she answered Xiao Mu's question in full detail like beans from a bamboo tube. When the dictum talisman was activated, there was almost no need for any reaction time for it to take effect. It was a girl who gave us a liter of rice and asked us to put on this show. That girl said that miss is kind-hearted. When you see me being chased and beaten by my husband, you will definitely save me. She also asked me to beg you to take me in. What does that girl look like? How old are you? Arbor asked coldly. The onlookers at the side were already dumbfounded. They didn't expect that this woman had teamed up with her husband to put on a show to deceive this rich young lady. She's pretty, just like a flower. She looks about 18 or 19 years old and is wearing a light pink fur coat. Her body looks a little frail, the woman replied honestly. Apart from rice, what else did I give you? Yes, yes, yes. The woman lowered her head and fished out a thumb-sized golden cicada from her waist pouch. She respectfully presented it to Arbor. Arbor swept a glance over and his expression changed slightly. He sneered, "What did she tell you? Tell me word by word." Yes, yes. The woman didn't hide anything and told Arbor everything that the girl told her. A trace of anger flitted across the crown prince's eyes. "We'll go do our business first," Arbor said in a flash and handed the child in his arms to Xiao Yao. "You send him home." Chapter 681. The onlookers who were watching the show were all confused and couldn't figure out what was going on. Xiao Yao couldn't help but be amused by their stupidity. She rested one hand on her waist and held the boy's hand with the other as she scolded, "Look at your foolish faces. Did you all think that our miss was randomly beating people up on the streets? This little boy was clearly abducted. Have you ever seen a mother use her own son as a cushion when she falls down? This child was fed a delirious poison, and it was our miss who gave him the antidote." Xiao Yao grumpily rebuked the passers-by. The onlookers were rendered speechless, and they all smiled sheepishly as they apologized profusely. Peony kicked the swindler couple and asked them where they had picked up the child. Only then did she take the boy and leave. The Crown Prince and Arbor prepared to return to the Hidden Night Pavilion first to check on Ye's injuries. "Keep an eye on the two of them. Just keep them half alive," the Crown Prince instructed with a cold expression before leaving. Hui Feng immediately bowed his head slightly. The two of them left through the northern city gate, and the Crown Prince immediately summoned Little Seven. The moment the child appeared, Arbor immediately discovered that he had grown up quite a bit. He now looked like a 14 or 15-year-old youth. A pair of golden red eyes swept over her, and he snorted. Arbor also snorted back at him. He wasn't even as adorable as her Qingwan. Mo Lian was baffled. Why were these two little fellows like black-eyed chickens the moment they saw each other and didn't like each other? Little Seven. Mo Lian stroked Little Seven's little head. "Let's go to Marshall Mountain." Seventh Yen pridefully turned his small face away and abruptly turned his head back to glare at Xiao Mu, who had cast her gaze over. "Be nicer to little Mo." Yen Qi couldn't help but roar at Arbor. He didn't even know how his master got through all those years. He missed a person so pathetically, thought of a person, and longed for a person to appear. It was heartbreaking to see such a master. Xiao Mu trotted all the way to Yen Qi and suddenly reached out to smack his head. "You rude fellow. Call me big sister. How am I not good to him? Why are you so annoying? Every time you see me, you either roll your eyes or roll your eyes." Xiao Mu pinched Seventh Yan's cheek forcefully with her small hand, turning his handsome face into a steamed bun. Seventh Yan was so angry that he was breathing through his nose. Mo Lian was busy separating the two little guys from each other. She kept comforting her baby, "Jojo, be careful. You can't beat Little Seven. Little Seven, you're not allowed to do anything. Let go." Classmate Little Seven was about to die from anger. This damned woman was so fierce that she wanted to kill him. She came up and pinched his face. It hurt so much. Arbor smacked him on the head. "Call me big sister. Damned woman." Thump. 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 Little Seven reached out to hold his head. He was so angry that he wanted to immediately transform into his beast form and send her flying into the sky. But when he met Little Mo's warning gaze, he was a little scared. The little dragon was so angry. Big sister, stop hitting me. This damned woman. There were 2 small bumps on his head. Wouldn't it have been fine if you had called me big sister earlier? Arbor finally let go of this proud little dragon in satisfaction. Fierce woman. He had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to be her little brother. Chapter 682. Seventh Swallow angrily transformed into his dragon form and carried the 2 of them toward Wulua Mountain. The Hidden Night Pavilion's capital branch was built deep within Wulua Mountain. It had a steep natural barrier, so not many people could come here. There were only small groups of adventurers who didn't go deep into Wulua Mountain. Most of them hunted in the periphery. Thus, the Hidden Night Pavilion had been stationed in Wulua Mountain for many years, so it was relatively peaceful. Arbor followed the Crown Prince to a mountain wall and watched as the Crown Prince pressed his palm against a stone block. A stone door opened in the originally barren mountain wall. The 2 of them walked in hand, and Seventh Swallow angrily followed behind them. The inside of the stone wall was very spacious. The ceiling hung high, and the wall lamps reflected light. It was a different world. Hidden Flower walked over and bowed to the 2 of them. Your Highness, Stay Up Late's injuries are quite serious. As he spoke, he brought the 2 of them to a small stone room. The moment Arbor walked in, he smelled a faint scent of blood. Stay Up Late was lying on a stone bed with his eyes closed and a thin blanket covering his body. Crown Princess, be careful. When Hidden Flower saw Xiaomu walk to Aoye's side and lift his blanket, he hastily called out in shock. Arbor's hands were like flowing clouds. He quickly lifted half of Stay Up Late's blanket. A pitch-black withered branch that looked like a ghost claw suddenly shot out of his chest and went straight for Arbor. Xiaomu harumphed coldly, and a jade-green tree branch abruptly shot out from her sleeve, ruthlessly lashing at those 5 ghost claws upon contact. Every time it struck, the ghost claw would twist a little, and the pitch-black withered branch would emit black smoke. Not long after, it was smashed into pieces by the emerald-green branch, falling to the ground piece by piece. Cho-Cho, what the hell is this? Arbor actually didn't know what had come out of Stay Up Late's chest. Thus, he communicated with it telepathically. Cho-Cho said disdainfully, Master, this is an evil plant called the Ghost Claw Vine. It looks like a ghost claw and attacks very quickly. But, if he meets Cho-Cho, isn't it a piece of cake? Arbor had long since gotten used to the smelly Cho-Cho style of praising himself every 3 sentences. Prince walked over and looked down at the wound on Stay Up Late's chest. Jojo, how are you? It's okay, I'll give him an injection. The ghost-clawed vine in his body has also been removed. He will recover. Hidden Flower heaved a sigh of relief. The Crown Prince crushed half of the vine on the ground. I didn't expect that the Qin estate was still hiding a demonic cultivator. I really underestimated them. Arbor took out his needle bag. His hands paused for a moment. Qin estate. Aoye was injured by someone from the Qin estate. That's right. The Crown Prince sneered and said, this time, we were 1 step behind. The people of the Qin estate were 1 step ahead of us in erasing all traces of their collusion with the Shantian prefecture. It's really disappointing that we couldn't convict them. Moreover, even Aoye was heavily injured by the Qin estate's people. In this confrontation, the Crown Prince had suffered a hidden loss. The Qin estate had only lost an insignificant batch of pills. Speaking of which, he had lost this round. The 2 people from the Qin estate were indeed very smart. They were really 2 difficult bones to chew. Arbor seriously finished giving Aoye the injection and fed him 2 healing pills. Send someone to take good care of him for the next 2 days. He needs to rest for about 7 days. Hidden Flower nodded and sent the 2 people out of the stone room, bidding them farewell respectfully. Chapter 683. Wu residence, eldest master, eldest madam, it's bad, it's bad. The manservant guarding the door frantically ran in and shouted, the Supreme Court has come to arrest eldest Mississippi. What? The teacup in Master Wu's hand fell to the ground with a clang. He jumped up from his seat and angrily glared. What nonsense are you spouting? When did Xiao Su commit a crime to trouble the Supreme Court's people to come arrest her? As he spoke, 2 officers from the Supreme Court had already walked through the door and cupped their hands towards Master Wu. These lowly officers greet Sir Wu. Eldest Master Wu was precisely Princess Annam Wu Hongma's direct elder brother. This person had been ignorant and incompetent since young. If it weren't for relying on his brother-in-law, the vassal king of Henan, and desperately begging for an idle 7th-rank official position, he would probably still be a nobody right now. The Wu family was used to having smooth sailing days. Although the old master's official position wasn't high, with the vassal king of Henan as his brother-in-law, who dared to be disrespectful to the Wu family. This was the first time that the Supreme Court had sent people to challenge them. Apologies, Sir Wu. These lowly officers are under orders to arrest eldest Miss Wu. Please cooperate, sir. The 2 officers said with a fake smile. Impudent. Senior Madam Wu put on airs and angrily rebuked, what right do you have to arrest her? Our family Xiao Su is a pure and innocent maiden, so how could she follow you to the Supreme Court? We have an arrest warrant. Someone brought out evidence to say that your family's eldest miss committed attempted swindling. With both the witness and material evidence, eldest miss can't deny it. Will Madam please not wantonly obstruct the Supreme Court from handling the case? Otherwise, you won't be able to explain yourself in front of the great king. Senior Madam Wu was so angry that she fell onto her stool. She looked at the 2 officers with reddened eyes before hastily turning to eldest Master Wu and calling out, Master. Master Wu's lips also trembled, but he couldn't speak. Those 2 officers shook the arrest warrant in their hands and sneered, if eldest master doesn't hand her over, then this lowly officer can't return to report on our mission. We can only go in and arrest her ourselves. A moment later, the pale-faced Wu Xiaosu was called to the main hall. Without saying a word, a servant came forward and put shackles on her wrists. Old Madam Wu screamed, what are you doing? What did my daughter do? What right do you have to put her in chains? I'm sorry, Madam Wu. Young Miss Wu's attempted swindle was absolutely true. He was definitely going to jail. If you don't believe me, you can follow us to the Supreme Court. The Wu family's seal was carved into the corner of the rice bag. The servant impatiently pushed aside Senior Madam Wu who had pounced forward. Eldest Miss is a mystic cultivator. In order to prevent her from escaping, I'm sorry, but I could only put on special shackles for mystic cultivators. Take him away. Mother. Father. Wu Xiaosu's face was filled with fear and panic as she was dragged out by the 2 servants without any trace of politeness. Old Madam Wu almost fainted on the ground. She hurriedly grabbed the maidservant's hand and said in a trembling voice, prepare the carriage immediately. Go to the vassal king of Henan's estate. At dusk, the news of Princess Annam and Wu Hongma bringing Senior Madam Wu into the palace to tearfully complain to Her Majesty the Queen, accusing the Crown Princess of abusing her power to bully others, had spread like wildfire in the palace. When the Queen sent someone to the Qiao estate to invite the little girl had just returned to the estate for less than a quarter of an hour. When she heard the news, she didn't even lift her eyelids and only coldly instructed Xiao Yao, go call the steward over. Chapter 684. After Chang Zai hurried over, he greeted eldest Miss with trepidation. Although this eldest Miss was young, her aura was very frightening. Every time Chang Zai was in front of eldest Miss, he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. In half a cup of tea's time, gather all the servants and maids in the entire estate. Arbor coldly said, bring me all the indenture contracts. Also, call the people from the broker house over. Chang's eyes heart thumped. How could he dare to hesitate? He quickly went to inform all the servants and sent someone to the broker house to invite people over. In the quiet courtyard, Arbor had someone bring a chair to sit in front of her. In front of her was a small table with a list of personnel. Chunying and Xiaoyun were the first to arrive. They ran all the way over, their foreheads covered in sweat. When they saw eldest Miss sitting there and flipping through the list of personnel, they didn't dare to speak and just stood there obediently. Soon, half a cup of tea's time passed. Aside from Chunying and Xiaoyun, there was only the gardener Old Bai, the sweeping nanny Sun Yang, 2 maids from the outer courtyard, and 2 servants. The 8 people lined up in 2 rows and looked at each other in dismay. Arbor didn't say anything and ordered Xiao Yao to light an incense stick on the table. Her fingers lightly flipped through the list of personnel, occasionally raising her head to look at the people present. When the 2 incense sticks burned out, the last 2 servants who arrived late yawned and rushed over. Seeing many people standing in the courtyard, the 2 servants hurriedly squeezed behind the crowd. Compared to the other estates, the Qiao estate didn't have many servants. However, they also didn't have many masters. The eldest branch had a family of 5, while the second branch only had 2 people, so there were only 7 masters in total. Moreover, Qiao Mu wasn't home all year round. Speaking of which, 15 to 16 servants were enough to serve 6 masters. Father Qiao, Mother Qiao, and second Uncle Qiao were easy to talk to. Usually, there wasn't much work at home. Just look at how undisciplined these people were. Arbor sneered. He had Chunying and the other 8 people stand to the side and coldly looked at the remaining 7 or 8 servants. Steward Chang, you didn't inform them to come see me in half a cup of tea's time. Arbor coldly asked. Understood, Chang Sai said in a trembling voice. You dared to do this even after being notified. That means you don't have any respect for your master. Arbor sneered again. 10 strokes each. We'll talk after that. Those 7 to 8 boy servants and maids immediately panicked, but several black-clothed youths abruptly jumped out from behind Xiao Mu to suppress them, and they brandished their cudgels without any room for protest. Among them, there was a boy servant that Xiao Mu recognized. He was precisely her younger brother Qiao Sen's lackey who was making the most noise and yelling the most viciously. After each of them hit 10 times without missing a beat, the black-clothed youths retreated behind Arbor in a well-trained manner. Arbor coldly glanced at the crowd. If you still dare to howl, I'll hit you 20 more times. In an instant, there was complete silence in the front courtyard. I've summoned all of you here today because I want all of you to honestly answer a question of mine. Arbor's eyes were unusually cold as he swept his gaze across the row of servants standing in front of him. A few days ago, someone sold information about my court to the eldest miss of the Wu family. They said that I was unreasonable, crafty, and cold by nature. They said that I didn't like people to serve me at close quarters. They even dismissed the people of Nanju Garden. As soon as Arbor finished speaking, the last 2 young servant girls who had blended into the crowd lowered their heads. They couldn't help but tremble all over. Chapter 685. I'll give you a chance to live. Whoever stands out now and confesses honestly, I'll let her go. Arbor said coldly, don't wait until I drag you out. At that time, even the Heavenly Emperor won't be able to save you. The last angry shout spread throughout the courtyard. Everyone felt their chests tighten and couldn't help but tremble. This group of servants usually had nothing to do. They ate her Qiao estate's things and used her Qiao estate's things, but in the end, they still betrayed her. She told Wu Xiaosu that there were no more servants in her Nanju garden. Wu Xiaosu was sure that she would meddle in other people's business and save that woman. She made that woman beg her in front of everyone and told her to definitely accept that shrew for the sake of her face. TSK, what a fantasy. She wanted to trick her. She would let them, these repulsive people, taste their own bitter fruits first. You won't speak. 7 to 8 dictum talismans floated in front of her. Arbor shouted coldly, I'll tell you, wait until I personally find out who betrayed me. Then you will have no way to live. Eldest Miss, please spare us. Eldest Miss, please spare us. The 2 servant girls who were hiding at the back of the crowd finally couldn't withstand the pressure and scrambled forward. They cried and kowtowed repeatedly. Chang Sai, who was at the side, broke out in a cold sweat. His legs were like noodles and his legs were trembling. These 2 audacious little girls really dared to provoke the lion in the sky. Arbor's eyes shot out a cold and sharp light. She hated betrayal the most in her life. Although these 2 servant girls' betrayal didn't cause her any real loss, this didn't mean that she would easily forgive them. She didn't fall into their trap because she was meticulous and saw through people. It could also be said that she had suffered in her previous life and accumulated experience. It wasn't because they were merciful. Originally, there was no grudge between them. However, for a small profit, Xiaochen threw away his bottom line as a person. Don't talk so much in the future. Let them eat it. Arbor threw out 2 pills, and the 2 black-clothed youths immediately understood. They took the pills and stepped forward, grabbed the 2 frightened and trembling servant girls, and forced them to swallow the pills. The 2 of them became mutes on the spot, unable to speak. 2 pairs of frightened eyes, with a trace of resentment, stared at Arbor. You're not convinced. Then I've changed my mind. Arbor looked coldly at the 2 girls who were glaring at him with hatred. Kill them. The 2 maidservants' pupils suddenly shrank. They opened their mouths but found that they couldn't make a sound. In the next second, 2 cold lights flashed past their necks, and a red liquid sprayed out. Everyone felt as if their hearts were being gripped tightly by something, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. In the future, if anyone dares to reveal any of the trivial matters of my Nanju garden to unrelated people, they will be punished. That's the outcome. If you can't control your mouth, then don't ask for another mouth in the future. Chunying. Chunying knelt on the ground with a plop, and said with fear and trepidation, Eldest Mississippi. This servant will scrupulously abide by her duties and won't dare to blabber nonsense. Arbor shook his head, looked at her, and said, From now on, I'll give you the right to manage the household. Xiaoyun, you'll replace Chunying and serve my mother. The 8 of you, starting from this month, your monthly allowance will be doubled. Arbor's words stunned the 8 maidservants who had arrived first. As for the rest of you. Arbor looked coldly at the servants who had arrived late. Putting on airs to the heavens, putting on airs even more than your masters. My Qiao estate can't afford to support you. Sell them all. Chapter 686. When the servants heard this, they felt as if the sky was about to collapse. They had been eating and living well in the Qiao estate for the past 2 years, and they were used to living a good life. Now that the Qiao estate had been promoted to a marquis estate, their lives were even more prosperous. Compared to the children of other poor families, they were all as comfortable as young masters and misses. Now, eldest miss actually wanted to drive them out with just one sentence. This time, everyone panicked, and they only hated that they had offended eldest miss, this ancestor. This ancestor wasn't as easy to talk to as the other members of the Qiao family. She would poison them to mute them, kill them to kill them. Her swift and decisive methods were completely unlike the other people in the Qiao estate who were soft and docile. The servants all cried and begged for mercy. But how could Arbor care about them? She had given them a chance, but unfortunately, only half of them grasped it. Since that was the case, she didn't need to be polite with them. It's so noisy, so annoying. Drive them all out. Arbor threw the name list on the table and beckoned to Chunnying. Chunnying hurriedly ran over and respectfully bowed to pick up the name list on the table. Cross out the names of the people who were driven out today. Also, check if there are enough people in the estate to clean. If there aren't enough, pick 2 or 3 honest people from the broker house. It doesn't matter if they are men or women, as long as they are willing to work hard. Yes, Mississippi, Chunnying was someone who could read. These 2 years she had always been by Madam's side, helping to manage the household, so she naturally had some skills as a housekeeper. Arbor nodded. It will be the new year in 10 days. Tomorrow, go find a few people from the clothing workshop and buy 2 sets of winter clothes for the new year for each of the servants and boys. Calculate how much cloth is needed and report to me when the time comes. There is no harm in having more, but don't shortchange anyone. Chunnying's mouth was slightly agape. Even the servants and manservants beside her were looking at their little mistress in a daze. Their master, who was still furious just now, was now softly talking about giving them more clothes for their monthly allowance, so that they could happily celebrate the new year. Yes, Mississippi, Chunnying curtsied, her face beaming with joy as she agreed. Xiao Yao pursed her lips and smiled. Actually, her young miss was the easiest to get along with. As long as everyone did their jobs well and didn't cause trouble, her young miss wouldn't care what they did for the rest of their time. Standing to the side, Chang Zai, whose legs were still trembling, suddenly knelt down with a thud and weakly called out, "Eldest Mississippi." At this time, Arbor's anger had already dissipated by half. When he turned to look at Chang Zai, his expression was a little better. You didn't manage your family well, and there were many incidents in your family. Do you know your crime? Eldest young miss, this old servant knows his wrongs. I beg eldest young miss not to chase this old servant out. Chang Zai trembled as he spoke. The gardener, Old Bai, who was on good terms with Chang Zai, also fell to his knees. He kowtowed and stammered, "Young miss, I can't double the monthly allowance. I beg young miss, don't kick big brother Chang out." They were all ordinary people, and Chang Zai was already over 50 years old. If he was kicked out, he definitely wouldn't be able to find work. When the time came, there really wouldn't be any way to make a living. Su Nyang and the 2 of them were the first to enter the residence, so their friendship was naturally different. When she heard this, she also quickly knelt down and pleaded with Arbor. Xiao Mu looked at them expressionlessly, causing the trio's hearts to beat like a drum, feeling very uneasy. Chapter 687. Chang Zai was deeply afraid of implicating the 2 old fellows and hurriedly cried, "Eldest miss, please don't be angry at Old Bai and Su Nyang. This matter has nothing to do with them. I'll just leave." After saying this, he turned to leave with a hunched back. Arbor coldly called out, "Stop right there." Chang Zai's steps froze. Arbor glanced at the 3. "So you 2 are willing to give up double your monthly allowance for Chang Zai?" Yes, eldest miss, we are willing." The 2 nodded in unison without hesitation. "You are also willing to leave the Chiao estate on your own. Will you bear a grudge against me?" Arbor raised her brows and looked at Chang Zai. Chang Zai hurriedly turned around and fell to his knees again. This old servant does not dare. All these years, this old servant has received the Chiao estate's grace and has been taken care of by master and madam. Even if I leave the estate, I do not dare to betray my masters. Rise." Arbor speechlessly looked at the 3 of them. When did I say that I wanted to drive you out of the estate? Chang Zai, Old Bai, and Sun Yang were all startled and carefully thought back. That's right, when Miss had been angry just now, she had not said a single word about driving Chang Zai out. At most, she had ignored Steward Chang. I removed you from your position as the steward only because I felt that you weren't too suited for the position of steward. Xiao Mu sighed as she explained, although you are indecisive in handling matters, you are a loyal and righteous person. You have followed my parents for so many years. Even if you have not performed meritorious deeds, you have still worked hard. How could I drive you out? Could it be that in your eyes, I, your miss, am so unreasonable? Chang Zai hurriedly said that he did not dare. Old Bai and Sun Yang were not good with words and could only follow Chang Zai's lead and say that they did not dare. All right, all of you rise. Arbor moved her fingers and took out 2 small pouches. Xiao Yao pursed her lips and smiled. She knowingly took 2 small bags and walked over to Old Bai and Sun Yang. She handed them to them. Here, this is a gift from Mississippi. Take it and calm your nerves. The 2 of them got up from the ground in a daze, each of them stupidly hugged a small bag and peeked inside. There were 2 pieces of ham inside. These days, meat was much more expensive than rice. This was a bountiful reward. Old Bai and Sun Yang both stared blankly at their little master. Chang Zai, you have 2 very good friends. At this time, Chang Zai already knew that the young miss would not chase him out of the house, and his nerves were no longer as tense. Hearing this, he smiled from the bottom of his heart and nodded repeatedly. From now on, you can work at my parents' Li Jing garden. Arbor said faintly, you're getting old. You can just ask me to do some trivial things. Many thanks to Mississippi, Chang Zai secretly wiped his old tears, his heart feeling more and more guilty. He didn't manage to cure the house, but the young miss did not blame him and even allowed him to stay. In the future, when he took care of the master and madam's small courtyard, he could not be so careless. He absolutely could not fail to live up to the young miss's trust in him. Arbor nodded and let them leave first. Chunying also took the remaining 2 servants and 2 manservants to leave, looking for the trafficker to choose servants. Soon, a black-clothed youth flashed to Arbor's side and whispered a few words to her. Arbor slightly raised an eyebrow, a cold light flashing through her eyes. Wait for me to go out and take a look. Master, the green mammy by the queen's side has been waiting for a long time. Arbor's footsteps paused, and she nodded to the youth. Go call her over. Chapter 688. Arbor waved his hand to dismiss the other hidden guards before leading a hidden guard named Lightning to the door. Lightning and Huifeng, who served the crown prince, both came from the hidden guard camp, which was a bit different from the nature of the hidden night pavilion's work. Arbor finally understood everything now. Those with the word hidden in their names, such as Hidden Flower and Hidden Current, were all members of the hidden pavilion and specialized in assassinations. However, when those idiots were idle, they liked to visit the night pavilion to cause trouble. As for those with the word Yi in their names, such as Charming Night and Midnight Supper, they were all members of the night pavilion. Their main job was to travel to various large cities and towns to gather intelligence. Sometimes, they might even have to travel to faraway countries to gather all kinds of intelligence. The hidden guards from the hidden guard camp were usually the crown prince's bodyguards. Of course, when the hidden night pavilion was very busy, the hidden guards might have to lend a hand or something. The crown prince's hidden night pavilion's hidden guard camp had been established for who knew how many years. Its scale was already very large, so it was quite easy for Arbor to use it directly. Especially the hidden guard camp. It was said that the great king's father, the old Grand King, had directly passed it down to the crown prince when he was still alive. There were also some extraordinary people that Arbor had never seen before. Arbor had just arrived at the door with Lightning when he saw the manservant hugging his younger brother and refusing to let go. The manservant was wailing loudly, as if he wanted to vent all of his grievances. The slave trader stood to the side and watched awkwardly. Apart from the manservant who seemed to be on steroids and refused to leave Xiao Sen's side no matter how hard he tried, the other maids and manservants all shrank behind the slave trader listlessly, not daring to resist at all. Arbor raised his hand and pointed. Lightning's figure flashed, and he reached out to pick up the wailing manservant. Arbor waved at his younger brother. "You're back, sister." Xiao Sen was baffled by his manservant's crying as soon as he returned from the academy. When he saw Arbor standing at the door, he hastily ran over and pulled on his sister's hand, asking, "Sister, what happened? Why is Adong crying like this?" Arbor didn't hide it from him. He told his brother everything and then asked, "Do you want to keep this kind of servant who bullies his master?" The manservant hurriedly crawled to kneel in front of Xiao Sen and cried out, young master, you can't abandon this servant." Xiao Sen's little face flushed red. He went up and kicked the manservant. "How dare you be so disrespectful to my sister? He deserved to be sold. This young master doesn't have a wicked servant like you. Leave immediately. Let me tell you, even Big Brother Crown Prince has to listen to my sister. Of course. I am no exception. Even this young master had been ruthlessly beaten by my elder sister, let alone a manservant like you. You really have no discernment. You actually foolishly went against the wind and committed a crime. You're the biggest joke in the world, trying to challenge my elder sister? How capable do you think you are?" Our dear Xiao Sen was someone who knew when to yield and when not to yield. He had long discovered that his elder sister was the one in charge of the entire family. Even someone as powerful as his big brother had to listen to his elder sister. What kind of thing does a manservant like you think you are? How dare you climb all over his elder sister? You deserve to be scolded. Our dear Xiao Sen hurriedly drew a clear line between himself and the manservant, indicating that he wasn't on the same side as him. He pulled his sister towards the door. Chapter 689. This child had been raised by the old madam's side since he was young and had been spoiled to the point of being out of control. Fortunately, he was a little fearful of his older sister now, so she could still control him. Otherwise, it would be harder to teach him in the future. Arbor glanced at this mischievous child in amusement and exasperation. She shook her head and followed him through the door. Coincidentally, the green mammy was led all the way here. When she saw Arbor, her expression darkened slightly. She took a few steps forward and curtsied hastily. "Eldest Miss Chiao, can we leave now?" "Oh, wait a moment," Arbor said carelessly. The green mammy's expression became even more unsightly. "Wait a moment. This old servant is afraid that this old servant can wait, but Her Majesty the Queen can't. How do you know whether Imperial Mother can wait or not?" Mo Lien's voice drifted in from the door. The green mammy was slightly alarmed. She quickly turned around and led the two junior palace maids to perform a standard curtsy to the Crown Prince. "Greetings, Your Highness." Arbor pattered to the Crown Prince and tugged at his sleeve. "Take me to the place where Wu Xiaosu is imprisoned." The Crown Prince nodded and turned to look at the green mammy and the others. "Go and reply to Imperial Mother first. Just tell her that we will come over in an hour." The green mammy's eyes narrowed slightly, and she hastily said, "Your Highness, but..." The Crown Prince's cold gaze shot over and landed on the green mammy. "You don't understand." The green mammy was so frightened that cold sweat dripped down. She hastily knelt on the ground with a thud and pressed her head firmly as she repeatedly said, yes, this old servant understands." The Crown Prince held Arbor's small hand and walked out. Before they left, Arbor glanced at the kneeling green mammy, who was secretly peeking at her from the corner of her eye. Her lips curled in a cold smile. Wu Xiaosu had been imprisoned in the Supreme Court's prison for nearly 4 hours. The two people's carriage went straight to that place. When they arrived at the Supreme Court, the Xiaoqing had already received the news and came out to welcome them. He led the two people to the prison. The cell door opened, and a long flight of stairs appeared under everyone's feet. Arbor glanced at the Crown Prince and tugged at his sleeve. The Crown Prince looked at her in amusement and whispered, "You're going down alone." Arbor nodded. The Crown Prince looked at her helplessly. "What, are you still whispering to each other?" As he spoke, he turned to the Vice-Chancellor of the Supreme Court and said, "Let's stay here. Let the jailer open the door for the Crown Princess." "Yes, yes." Xiaoqing nodded repeatedly and pointed to a jailer to take Arbor away. Just as Arbor was about to leave, he turned around, raised a small hand, and suddenly pinched the Crown Prince's face. He muttered, "I don't like it when she looks at you and acts pitiful." Thinking of Wu Xiaosu's little white flower appearance, crying endlessly in front of the Crown Prince, Arbor felt unhappy in his heart. After he finished speaking, he left the petrified Crown Prince, Xiaoqing, and the others behind and followed the jailer. Huifeng. What should he do when he suddenly discovered that his master was being teased? The Vice-Chancellor of the Supreme Court was nearly 40 years old and usually felt that he was quite up to date with the times. At this moment, he snapped out of his petrification and snuck a glance at the Crown Prince. When he saw the latter's smile and joyful expression, he instantly felt that his mentality had been through a lot. Young people nowadays really knew how to flirt with their partners. "Your Highness, how about we go up first? This humble subject will order someone to serve tea." He didn't know how long the Crown Princess was going to chat with Miss Wu, but he couldn't let the Crown Prince keep standing at the top of the stairs. Chapter 690. Crown Prince the Great. After calling him 3 times, the Crown Prince still didn't have much of a reaction and only kept smiling. On the side, Huifeng's mouth twitched, and he coughed lightly. Xiaoqing, go and prepare first. His Highness will be there in a moment." "Yes, yes." The Supreme Court's Xiaoqing hastily retreated. Huifeng couldn't help but cover his face. Oh no, Master was flirted silly again. The Supreme Court's Xiaoqing didn't see it, but when he looked over, he saw that Master's ears were red. Sigh, these days were so hard. The Crown Princess casually flirted, and my Crown Prince's soul left his body. "Your Highness." Don't stand at the top of the stairs and smile foolishly. Xiaoqing invites you over for tea. Huifeng helplessly poked the Crown Prince. Mo Lian returned to her senses and blinked her phoenix eyes. "Where's Jojo?" Huifeng almost missed a step and rolled down the stairs. The Crown Princess, who ran off after flirting, had no idea that she had flirted a man silly with 1 sentence. Under the jailer's lead, they arrived at the door of an independent prison cell. This type of prison cell used to imprison mystic cultivators was of a higher level, and there was an additional confinement talisman matrix on the cell door. Normal mystic cultivators couldn't escape from this prison filled with confinement talisman matrices if they wore specially made shackles and handcuffs. However, it was said that ding-ting-ding escaping from prison was a common occurrence. Even if you had 17 or 18 talisman matrices, escaping from prison was a matter of minutes for him. The prison cells on both sides were empty, and Wu Xiaosu was being held in this one. The jailer brought Arbor to the door of the prison cell. Under Arbor's signal, he opened the door for her and tactfully retreated far away. Arbor stepped through the door, and her gaze landed on Wu Xiaosu, who was huddled in the corner. Wu Xiaosu looked up when she heard footsteps. When she saw that the person walking against the light was Arbor, her eyes abruptly widened, and she pounced at Arbor like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. However, when she was several steps away from Arbor, her figure was abruptly pulled to a stop by 2 iron chains. Her arms were firmly bound by 2 iron chains on the wall. She could only bare her fangs and brandish her claws at Arbor, but she could never reach her. Arbor stood in front of Wu Xiaosu and looked at her indifferently. I couldn't figure out why you kept trying to get close to our Chao family. Later, the crown prince secretly told her that the palace maid who poisoned her at the banquet had a brief contact with Princess Anam. This goal was already very clear. Princess Anam wanted to avenge her good daughter, Commandery Princess Hui Yin. The vassal king consort of Nan, Wu Hongma, is your aunt, right? Wu Hongma had been plotting against her since the day of the banquet. What a whimsical woman. He wanted to give her a slow-acting poison so that she would eventually die unknowingly. That way, the crown prince wouldn't be suspicious. This method of poisoning was simple and crude. It could be said that if she succeeded, it would be a good plan. Unfortunately, no matter how much she calculated, she overlooked the fact that Xiao Mu was also well versed in the study of poison and had read thousands upon thousands of poison scriptures. This kind of concealed slow-acting poison might be quite stealthy and undetectable to other people, but to Xiao Mu, it was truly too common. Wu Xiaosu was ordered by Wu Hongma to pretend to get close to the Qiao family so that she could enter the family and find an opportunity to continue poisoning Arbor with slow-acting poison. Unfortunately, second Miss Qiao didn't like her from the start. Eldest Miss Qiao was as cold as ice and unapproachable, so she didn't have a chance. Chapter 691. As a result, she found someone to put on a show to trick Arbor. If the trick succeeded, Arbor would take pity on that shrew and bring her back. Naturally, she would have a chance to hibernate by Arbor's side and slowly continue to spread the poison. However, it was a pity that this Wu Xiaosu was young and impatient in the end. She was too impatient to handle matters properly, so Xiao Mu easily saw through her. Arbor flipped his hand and a small golden cicada appeared in front of Wu Xiaosu's eyes. When she saw the golden cicada, panic flitted across her eyes. Her entire body shook as she howled, "Arbor, what are you doing? I want to see Her Majesty the Queen. I want to see the Empress Dowager. I've been wrongly accused. Your so-called witnesses and evidence are just rumors and rumors. I didn't engrave the Wu family's seal on the inside of the rice bag." This was a blatant attempt to frame him. Arbor slightly curled his lips and didn't answer. Instead, he moved his finger and a body immobilization talisman floated out. "You!" Wu Xiaosu's entire body was cold. She opened her mouth in shock, but suddenly felt that her entire body couldn't move. With a slight flick of Arbor's finger, that small golden cicada flew into Wu Xiaosu's mouth and slid down her throat. Wu Xiaosu's eyes were filled with horror. If her entire body wasn't frozen, she would have already collapsed to the ground, trembling. Arbor's lips curled into a cold smile. Didn't Wu Xiaosu have that stupid woman on the street follow her home and wait for an opportunity to get close to her bedroom? She wanted to stuff this poisonous golden cicada under her bed and let it emit poisonous gas over time. TSK, why go through so much trouble? Just directly feed it to Wu Xiaosu and let it play its role in Wu Xiaosu's stomach. After Arbor finished dealing with Wu Xiaosu, he left her frozen like this. He didn't even help her resolve her predicament and leisurely left. When the two entered the palace hand in hand to see the queen, eldest Madame Wu's eyes were swollen from crying. Princess Anam even held back a bellyful of anger and drank tea for 4 hours. Without waiting for Princess Anam to make a fuss, the crown prince ordered people to bring the witnesses and material evidence to the queen and state the facts. Seeing the queen's silence, Senior Madame Wu became anxious. Xiao Su is still a virgin and is the princess consort's niece. Wouldn't it be a disgrace to the Wang clan if they were imprisoned like this? Besides, she was just a child and had accidentally offended the crown princess. The crown princess hasn't suffered any losses yet, so why can't she just take a step back? A country has its laws, and a family has its rules. Are you looking down on the law? The crown prince said indifferently, 3 months in prison is already a light punishment. Could it be that eldest Madame Wu wants your daughter to be beheaded for the crime of disrespect? I hope that after Miss Wu is released from prison this time, the Wu family will properly control her words and actions. Don't make any more mistakes, otherwise, we won't let her off easily. The next day, the queen still wanted to persuade her son to let Miss Wu go. After all, girls were prideful. Wouldn't it make people laugh to death if she came out of prison after 3 months? In the end, she received news that her son had left the capital early in the morning with his wife for Bailon. It was already the new year, yet they were still going out. Queen Zhao was so angry that she cursed her for raising a fake son. At this time, the young couple was already in the suburbs and had ridden on the same horse for some distance. From afar, they saw a small team of 7 to 8 people running toward the city gate in a fluster. Behind them was a large group of zombies that were running crookedly. There were at least 30 to 40 zombies. Although their running speed wasn't slow, they were all missing arms and legs, and their postures were twisted. Chapter 692. However, this batch of zombies moved at the same speed as a normal person. If there were no mishaps, it should be a batch of level 3 zombies. The squad of 7 to 8 people fled in a panic. From afar, they saw the crown prince and Arbor foolishly standing still with their horses in front of them. In their panic, they glanced at the two of them and silently criticized them. They felt that they were two young people who had been scared silly. Otherwise, why didn't they run when they saw such a large batch of zombies? They even foolishly placed their horses in the middle of the road. Why are there so many zombies? The little girl asked crisply. Arbor really hadn't seen so many zombies moving together in a long time. In the area around Guanlon City, there were basically mystic cultivator squads going out on missions every day to purge the nearby zombies. It was already good enough to occasionally see 1 or 2 zombies on the road, so it was truly surprising to see such a small batch of zombies. These people's luck was really good. Seeing the 7 to 8 people running closer and closer, Arbor stared at the tall, plump, middle-aged uncle in the lead with a slightly strange gaze. "Captain!" A fierce scream came from behind him. The tall fatty turned around and saw a tall zombie missing an arm already close to the back of his head. 2 protruding fangs appeared in its huge mouth, looking especially cold and eerie. "Fuck!" Without any explanation, the tall fatty raised the fire tongs in his hand and firmly smacked the pouncing zombie's face. The zombie's eyeball immediately flew out of its left eye socket. "Hurry and run, little girl." A chubby auntie beside the tall fatty was also doing her best to run. The moment she opened her mouth, she spat at Arbor and Mo Lien, gesturing for them to quickly turn around and run into the city. Although the chubby auntie was wide and fat, she was very agile and abnormally fast. She was a speed-type superpower user. Seeing them running over in a hurry, Arbor's beautiful eyes scanned the faces of the 8 people in the squad. The more he looked, the more radiant his eyes became. "What are you looking at?" Mo Lien reached out and pulled the little fellow's face back. This child was staring at her without blinking. Was he really that good-looking? The team consisted of 8 people, young and old, men and women, all of whom looked ordinary. He really didn't know why his Jojo couldn't take his eyes off them. "Come over quickly." Xiao Mu waved her hand at Fatty Gao and company. Hurry, hurry. Fatty Gao's mouth twitched. Little girl, run. Don't just stand there. We really can't handle these dozens of level 3 corpse puppets. Get down, all of you. The little guy waved his hand forcefully. Everyone looked at her in confusion, only to see the fair and tender little girl take out a round thing from her sleeve. Mo Lian's eyebrows twitched slightly. She was just about to grab the little fellow's little hand. The round core ravaging thunder had already been thrown out by her and landed in the midst of the zombie horde. Boom! A huge explosion shook the earth and the mountains. The 8 people in the squad rolled on the ground with stupefied expressions. They hugged their heads and lay on the ground, looking up at the little girl who was leaving. Huge Bear Squad, wait for me to come back. See you. The little girl hugged the youth's waist and turned to wave at the group of people lying on the ground. Who dares to be so impudent at Guanlon City's North Gate? Several angry rebukes were mixed with several fierce figures flying out of the city gate. Chapter 693. The 8 members of Huge Bear Squad continued to lie there motionlessly, holding their heads as they stared ahead in a daze. The core-ravaging thunder had blasted a huge crater in front of them, and none of the 30-odd zombies were spared. All of them were blown to smithereens. Several mystic experts stationed at Guanlon City's North Gate flew out of the city and were stunned when they saw this scene. The members of Huge Bear Squad slowly crawled up from the ground after a long while. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. Captain, WWR Huge Bear Squad is so famous now. Even a random little girl passing by can call out our Huge Bear Squad's name. 2 lumps of red appeared on a young team member's face in excitement. Huge Bear Squad's captain, Gao Xing, irritably slapped the back of that team member's head. What nonsense are you spouting? It must be because she saw the badges we're wearing on our chests. Everyone looked down. The Huge Bear badge wasn't very obvious, and the bear carved on the badge wasn't mighty. To be honest, could that girl really tell that this badge was a huge bear? What exactly happened here? A mystic guarding the city solemnly looked at Captain Gao Xing. Gao Xing smiled foolishly and rubbed the back of his head. It's just that just now, our squad accidentally attracted a group of zombies to chase after us. An expert passed by and helped us take care of the zombies. Ah, right, we're the Huge Bear Squad that went to the North Slope to dig up wild vegetables. Now that the mission is complete, we plan to return to the city. The mystic guarding the city looked at the badges on their chests and nodded. According to the rules, you guys will first stay in the tent area outside the city for a few days. You can only enter the city when it's about time. Okay. Everyone understood the rules, so Gao Xing nodded without objection. Only then did he lead his teammates to the tent area at the North City Gate. Besides, after the little fellow did something bad, Mo Lian knew that this action would definitely alarm the city guards, so she quickly rode away with this little ancestor. Arbor was in a great mood and was snickering like a little mouse the entire way. Mo Lian helplessly stroked the little fellow's head. With such a loud explosion, the nearby zombies have all been drawn over. Arbor turned his little head to look at him. Action teams have missions to do, so they can eat. Moreover, there were probably less than 100 undead puppets within 100 miles of Guanlon City. The ones that needed to be cleaned up had all been cleaned up by the operation teams. Mo Lian couldn't help but laugh. Do you want little Seven to take us there? No need. Didn't you say that it would take less than a day to ride a horse to Bailon City? Yes, at this speed, we'll be there in the evening. Then let's take a look along the way. The little fellow took out a packet of Osmantha's candy from her pocket and put one in Mo Lian's mouth. Prince Mo couldn't tell what the candy tasted like, but the little girl's soft and greasy little finger brushed against his lips. It felt soft, and was incredibly sweet. On the other side, at the Marquis of Jeyuan's estate, a quick-witted boy servant quickly walked into the hall and saluted the lord and madam at the head of the table. "Lord and madam, there are guests outside who claim to be members of your family." Xiao Zhongbang, who had just finished eating and was looking at his son's recent homework, paused while holding a book. Wei Ziqin also looked up and couldn't help but frown. Chapter 694. Clansmen of the Main Clan. Wasn't that? Ha ha ha. Zhongbang, why didn't you tell the main clan that you've moved to Guanlon City for so long? A laugh came from outside the door. You can't just barge in. The sound was mixed with the footboy's anxious cry. Master, madam, they. Xiao Zhongbang looked up and saw an elderly man in his 60s leading two middle-aged men who were slightly older than him through the door. The elderly man smiled and nodded repeatedly at him. Clan head. Xiao Zhongbang and his wife stood up and greeted the elderly man with an indifferent expression. They waved their hands to dismiss the footboy. It wasn't that they hadn't contacted the main clan after moving here for so long. It was that when they had moved here back then, the husband and wife had brought gifts and visited with Xiao Zhongxing the next day, wanting to contact the main clan. In the end, they had been stopped outside by several snobbish gatekeepers. At that time, Xiao Zhongbang and Xiao Zhongbang had even met the middle-aged man on the left behind the elderly man. When that person heard that they were a branch of the Qiao clan from Quoto village, he didn't even look at the husband and wife and directly had them driven away, not even allowing them to finish speaking. This matter had left a shadow in the hearts of Xiao Zhongbang and his brother. In the 2 years since they had moved to Guanlon City, they had never paid a visit to the Qiao clan's main clan head again. Hey, why are you treating me like an outsider by calling me clan head? The Qiao clan's main clan head, Qiao Dongbua, smiled and waved his hand. Zhongbang, I also watched you grow up. In terms of seniority, I am your eldest uncle. There's no need to treat me like an outsider by calling me clan head. Xiao Zhongbang said neither coldly nor warmly, I don't dare. We two brothers are farmers from Quoto village in a remote and desolate area. We don't dare to have any relationship with the main clan. If there's nothing else, please leave. Clan head Qiao Dongbua's old face stiffened. The two middle-aged men behind him were furious, especially the man on the left. When he heard Xiao Zhongbang's voice, he realized that he had met this person 2 years ago. However, at that time, Xiao Zhongbang and his wife were dressed very plainly. At first glance, one could tell that they were country bumpkins from the countryside. Unlike now, they were dressed in silk and satin. Zhongbang, we are all clansmen of the same clan. There is no need to be so calculative. Clan head Qiao Dongbua said with a calm face, what happened 2 years ago, it's all because of that little servant boy who was guarding the door. He didn't understand the ways of the world. Don't worry, I'll deal with them as soon as we get back. No need. Xiao Zhongbang waved his hand, turned around, and pulled his wife into the inner hall. I'm sorry, I have something to discuss with my wife, so I won't see you off. This old man still dared to bring up the incident from 2 years ago in front of them, which meant that he already knew about it. However, at that time, Xiao Zhongbang and his brother were only good-for-nothings in the main clan's eyes. How could the main clan ever care about them? Qiao Dongbua was so angry that his mouth crooked, and he brought his 2 sons out of the marquis's estate with his tail between his legs. Qiao Zhongde immediately cursed, Dad. He's only a good-for-nothing who obtained the marquis title because he sold his daughter for glory. Does our Qiao family still need to rely on him? A good-for-nothing, a good-for-nothing. A good-for-nothing is about to break through to the peak of level 7 Mystic Cultivator realm. What about you? You're just a mere level 6 Mystic Cultivator, yet you keep calling someone else a good-for-nothing. The clan head's words shocked Xiao Zhongde. Earlier, he was only concerned about being angry and didn't pay attention to Xiao Zhongbang's cultivation at all. Chapter 695. What do you know? I heard that this future crown princess is deeply doted on by the crown prince. She herself is also a very capable child. If she can return to our clan. Reputation, status, resources, wouldn't they have everything they could wish for? He heard that His Highness the Crown Prince frequently sent gifts to Qiao Zhongbang and his wife, being incredibly diligent. Qiao Zhongde only felt his teeth ache as he muttered softly, but they have to be willing to come back first. Looking at Qiao Zhongbang and his wife's attitudes, it was impossible. Isn't it all your fault? Qiao Dongbo was so angry that he kicked his eldest son. You're such a blind thing. You offended that couple for no reason. I'm telling you, you have to think of a way for me. No matter how you beg, you have to invite the couple back to the main family. I want to see that child Arbor's figure in the Qiao family competition after the Lantern Festival. A strange glint flashed through Qiao Dongbo's eyes. This crown prince's section break, clatter clatter clatter. The little white horse galloped happily, galloping up the slope with the young couple on its back. When it was close to noon, the young couple had already galloped the entire way. With the crown prince carrying her in his arms, Arbor's hair and clothes were clean, neat, and elegant, without the slightest speck of dust. Moreover, she was jolting on the horse, already wanting to sleep. Not long after descending the slope, the two people stopped at the entrance of a small village. There should already be no one in this village. After all, the people nearby had either moved to Bailon fortifications or definitely moved to the nearby Mo kingdom capital. Who would stay in such a withered, small, and dilapidated village? Moreover, there were hidden dangers in terms of safety. Who could guarantee that zombies wouldn't suddenly break through the window in the middle of the night? Pass through this village. Mo Lian lowered her head to look at the sleepy little fellow who was nodding incessantly, and she couldn't help but find it funny. Arbor reluctantly glanced at this village. From here, the village was very dilapidated, with broken walls and dilapidated walls, and there weren't many intact houses inside. Isn't it closer if we go from here? It should be, Mo Lian nodded, but this village looks a little spooky, don't be afraid. How am I scared? Arbor snorted and looked down at the little white snake that poked its little head out of his waist pocket. She had mentally prepared herself for half a day before she finally made up her mind to bring the little white snake along. There was no other reason. She had to work hard to get rid of the psychological shadow of the past. She couldn't just run away in fear when someone threw out a Xian beast snake when she was fighting with someone in the future. This was too fucking cowardly. He had to overcome it. In addition, the little white snake kept looking at her with a pitiful gaze that said, "Please don't give up." Xiao Mu felt a little helpless. Along the way, the little white snake was very obedient. It curled up in her waist pocket and poked its little head out to look at the scenery. It didn't make a single sound. Arbor subconsciously reached out and stroked the little snake's round head. The little white snake immediately rubbed its head against her small hand excitedly. At this time, Prince Mo had already urged his horse into the village. As soon as the two entered the village, they thoroughly sensed the desolation of this place. Let alone people, it was impossible to even have a single bird in this kind of place. To put it bluntly, even a mouse would probably starve to death if it took root here. Arbor's large eyes darted back and forth, blinking nimbly. Suddenly, she heard a faint sound. Chapter 696. The two of them turned their heads and instantly saw a bony claw reaching out from the crack in the wall. The claw was black and thin, covered in blue veins, and looked especially frightening. If a normal person saw it, they would fall off their horse in fright. But the young couple only looked at each other, then continued to watch the hand slowly reach out from the crack in the wall. Then came half a head covered in dust and dirt, and half a body so thin that it was all skin and bones. A pitiful man with a somewhat deformed head and a body as thin as a bean sprout crawled out from the corner of the earth. When his gaze met the young couple's, he was clearly stunned, and his entire body froze on the spot. There was actually someone here. Arbor carefully looked at the person, and after examining him, he confirmed that this was a person and not a corpse puppet. Although he looked a little deformed, he was most likely skinny from hunger. His eyes were strong, and his limbs were agile, so he was clearly not a corpse puppet. Mo Lien reached out and grabbed, and the man who was so thin that he was almost out of shape was brought up in front of him. "Who are you? Why are you hiding there so sneakily?" That person called out ba twice, and his face revealed a slightly frightened expression. He repeatedly kowtowed to the two of them and begged for mercy. He was actually a mute. A mute hiding in this shabby village and still being able to live for so long. It was really unknown how he spent his days to become so thin. Mo Lien flipped off his horse and walked over to the crack in the wall that the mute had crawled out from to look. There seemed to be a cellar down there, and the mute probably slept in that cellar every day. "I'll go down and take a look, Jojo." Mo Lien pointed down. Arbor nodded, and retracted his gaze to look suspiciously at the mute. "Are you really a mute?" The mute made two short, "ah" sounds, and his voice was also very hoarse. Arbor flipped his finger, and suddenly threw a body-securing talisman at him. Suddenly, the mute nimbly dodged to the side, and fiercely dodged the talisman. He flipped his hand and threw a handful of dust at Arbor. Arbor's lips curled into a sinister smile. With a light swipe of his fingertips, several streams of water rushed out, directly washing away all the dust that Mute had scattered over. Mute was clearly taken aback, and his huge pupils contracted slightly. Water spirit. Impossible. How could such a young girl be a spirit master? That deformed Mute suddenly opened his mouth, and a snake's forked tongue abruptly darted out of his mouth. It wriggled and darted straight for Chow Mu's small face. Arbor didn't expect the Mute in front of him to do such a disgusting thing. The snake's tongue was thick and fat, red with a tinge of black. It suddenly swept towards her face. In the blink of an eye, Arbor's finger trembled slightly and his mystic energy seeped into the defensive ring on his fingertip, opening the eggshell in an instant. Thud! The snake's forked tongue hit the defensive barrier and made a soft sound. The serpent man retracted his tongue in pain, turned around, and ran away. Arbor let out a sigh of relief, only feeling that she had been disgusted. A white light flashed, and the little snake suddenly jumped out of Arbor's waist pocket. It passed through the defensive barrier without any hindrance, and directly bit the back of Mute's neck. Aw, aw, aw. Mute let out a low, hoarse cry, and suddenly threw himself onto the ground. He slithered forward like a snake, struggling in his death throes. The little white snake's bite was very fierce, and in a flash, black smoke came out of Mute's body. Chapter 697. Mute's body was like a sieve. Small holes appeared all over his body, all of which were emitting black smoke. This black smoke came from his body. Gradually, he was enveloped by this thick black smoke, and his figure couldn't be seen clearly. When Mo Lien jumped up from the cellar, she saw this scene and jumped in fright. She quickly rushed to Arbor and pulled her into her arms. What's going on? What could happen to me? Arbor pouted and pointed at Mute. He's the one who's in trouble. The white snake slithered out of the black smoke and softly pounced onto Arbor's hand, rubbing against her fingers cutely. Arbor stroked its head. Mo-Lien, the white snake bit him, and this person's whole body emitted black smoke. What kind of special skill is this? Mo-Lien gazed deeply at the white snakelet. The white snake wasn't to be outdone. It raised its head and swept a disdainful glance at Lord Mo with its round eyes. This is the dark power of the Netherworld. It's one of the 3 extremely strong and strange powers outside of the 5 spirits. It hasn't appeared for close to 1,000 years. I once read about it in the mysterious records of the upper 3 continents. There are only a few words about the description of the power of the Netherworld. When the white snake heard this, it shook its head and looked at Arbor with an expression that said, praise me, pet me. Arbor was a little amused. She raised her hand and stroked its little head. This power of the Netherworld also has a special power. Anyone killed by the power of the Netherworld will be able to control the dead person's movements for a certain period of time, depending on the user's control of the power of the Netherworld, Mo-Lien explained. At this time, after the black smoke dissipated, they saw Mute with his head drooping. He moved step by step in front of them. When he raised his head, his pair of eyes were gray. His long, snake-like tongue curled and stuck out. Demonic cultivator. Mo-Lien looked at Mute with a cold expression. He's already dead. Jojo, should we leave now or go down and take a look? Let's go down and take a look. We can let this person lead the way. Arbor's eyes lit up. Mo-Lien nodded. The cellar is connected to other places, but it seems to be connected in all directions. Without a guide, we may have to take a lot of detours. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Arbor was curious about the underground world. The 2 of them let Mute lead the way down the cellar. When they were brought to a rather large underground village, they couldn't help but be stunned. If they hadn't bumped into this Mute crawling out from the crack in the wall, they wouldn't have known that there was another path below the cellar and that there was a village built below. Mo-Lien narrowed her eyes. Such an underground village had appeared so close to the Mo Kingdom capital. Before this, not even the slightest bit of news had leaked out. This was truly a bit unusual, and it made him vigilant. When Mute led them into the village, 2 burly men walked up to them and said with a smile, "Yo, you're back. You brought back 2 fat lambs so quickly. Not bad." As they spoke, their eyes rolled in circles as they stared at this pair of fat lambs in amazement. This graceful appearance, tisk tsk. A handsome man and a beautiful woman. If they were presented to the village chief, then Mute would definitely receive great praise. Mute didn't make a sound. Even the occasional sounds that he usually made were gone. However, no one paid attention to it. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.